across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and good morning. Welcome to the show. We have now hit day 14 in the US-Israel war with Iran. And I think it's fair to say we're sort of beginning to hit a bit of a crunch point for President Trump. So far, the military operations, at least to my eyes, look as if they have been precision, exceptional. The targets have been struck. A lot of Iran's navy has been destroyed. The minesweepers that were going to riddle the Strait of Hormuz with incendiaries have also been taken out of action with targeted kinetic strikes. But the question is now, is how much more can the world take when it comes to that tiny 8-mile passage responsible for the cargo of 20% of the world's fuel supplies being closed? Well, that is the big question for Donald Trump as he soon faces midterm elections. What is it going to do to the price of oil? How is it going to affect the global economy? Will Iran start being able to use this as leverage to try and get people to start pulling away from supporting America and Israeli actions? A lot of questions to be asked this morning, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by just the man to ask them to. The brilliant Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, is with us now. Good morning to you, Alan.
Hello, Alex.
So it's now got to the stage, monitoring the war, that to me it seems that militarily America has been able to pull out of the bag a brilliant strategy. Same with Israel. They're getting through their targets, ticking them off the list, getting rid of the head honchos of the IRGC, of the regime, attacking various military sites, installations. But the problem, of course, is what's now going to go on with the mood of the rest of the world. Will it remain relatively supportive to American and Israeli actions? How do you see things playing out here? Is America going to be able to defend ships in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, America certainly can defend ships in the Straits of Hormuz. It's done it before in the 1980s, so it knows how to do this. The key to it, though, is, of course, the first step to do that. They have to clear basically as much of the danger from the Iranian coast as possible. That means taking out installations in ports. It means taking out kind of mobile launchers. It means taking out the swift boats the Iranians are using or have used in the past to interdict vessels. Once it can take those out, it can then begin a convoy system, as it did in the 1980s, to take ships through. And that will, of course, ultimately work, because for the Iranians to be able to win here, they've got to beat the US Navy, and they can't beat the US Navy. I mean, they can cause problems, that's for sure. They're causing problems right now. But if the Americans want to do this, they can do this. The question, Alex, is whether they want to do this. The question all the way along through this is what is actually the ultimate American war aim here, and how they're going to realize it.
Is it not essentially to stop the regime getting their hands on nuclear weapons, creating vast stockpiles of ballistic missiles, and then, with some luck, once time has passed on a bit, a popular uprising that will dislodge them? I must admit, Alan, I've not really ever fully understood the idea of what is the end goal in all of this, because to me the end goal seems quite obvious, which is prevent an evil, tyrannical terrorist regime from being able to threaten the entire world.
But you see, so that is, a big, you can stick that up in lights to say that's your goal, but achieving it is something else. Because, for example, the Americans bombed Iran's nuclear program with the Israelis last summer, and yet, barely a year later, they're doing it again. So the reality is, the point you're making about ultimately there being an uprising, changing the regime, that's a logical endpoint, but doing that is a very difficult process just from the air. And so I think and then to try and encourage people on the ground when they were just mowed down in their tens of thousands is not an easy thing to do either. So it's, we are still living in this realm of, yes, we understand what the Americans want and what the Israelis want, but how they actually get to it remains unclear, and how long they're prepared to take over it remains unclear as well.
Do you think that other countries will likely join America in trying to protect the Strait of Hormuz?
I think that's likely because, of course, many other countries need the Strait of Hormuz to be opened. So when it comes to convoys, I suspect that, again, as with the 1980s, other countries will play a role within that because it is simply a defensive move to keep shipping going. The Iranians are the aggressors here, trying to interdict the shipping, and I think if people want to see oil supplies resumed, that will rely on a convoy system started. But to go back to the key point, though, the Americans are the essential arbiters of this. This doesn't work without the Americans, and the Americans can do it on their own.
What do you make of where Britain is at the moment? Because a lot of the accusations for what is Donald Trump's plan, seem to come out or were initiated by Sir Keir Starmer, and yet no one seems to know what the UK's plan is. We don't know if we're going to be sending naval assets to go and defend the Strait of Hormuz. We seem to not have any idea of what we're supposed to be doing, all the while British troops are being attacked by Iranian drones.
Yes, well, this is the fundamental problem, I think. The government was given advance warning of what was likely to happen. It's told us it moved air assets into the region. It didn't move naval assets into the region, though. As a result, we've been playing catch up from day one. And it remains unclear what our stance is to do with repatriation of British nationals, what our position is on defending British citizens who are under constant attack, what our position is, on making sure our bases are secure. All these things we get sort of incremental piecemeal responses to, but the government hasn't really clarified, what its ultimate aims are here and how, crucially, it will achieve them.
I mean, no one can know the answer to this question other than those who have made the decisions they've taken. But what is your suspicion as to the government's motives for being so lily-livered about joining America in originally offensive action, but even not allowing America to use non-only US bases, or be they on British territory?
Well, I think on the first point, I don't think anyone in British politics, Alex, actually thought Britain should join the offensive action on, on the airstrikes. Britain wasn't asked to do that, and Britain, frankly, again, Israel and the US do not need Britain in this capacity. So from that perspective, I don't think anyone thought we should be involved in offensive strikes. The basing issue is very different, though. The basing issue, that has been a problematic point. I don't know what Keir Starmer was thinking with that issue. I mean, we've got bases here. The Americans operate. They operate, for our own defense from that. Somehow tell them they can't use their bases that they use for our defense on something else they're doing in a different part of the world seems to be an extraordinarily, kind of short-sighted thing to do, because it calls into question your value as an ally, not simply in the Middle East, but across the board. If you're not going to allow this, what else aren't you going to allow? And what value do you have in this way? And it's particularly bemusing, Alex, because 2 days later, after he said they couldn't use them, he said they could use them. So it didn't even achieve the merit of not having any basing uses at all. So all he did was offend the Allies needlessly. And by the way, it wasn't simply the Americans. The Gulf states, who we've had very close relations with for decades, they were mortified by our response and horrified by what we attempted to do there. So we've lost relations with them. Cyprus couldn't believe what's happened with the ship business in that setup as well. We've lost face with the Cypriots. It's basically been a decline of British influence overseas over a decision that was then countermanded 2 days later. So ultimately, utterly pointless, and just an example of how this government is all at sea when it comes to foreign and defence policy.
I was going to say the government might be all at sea, but most of our Navy vessels aren't. No. Let's talk about the long arm of Russia in all of this, because when I look at America's, what I believe to be grand strategy, I think a lot of it comes down to trying to break apart the anti-Western axis, initially taking out President Maduro in Venezuela, beginning to remove the illegal sale of sanctioned oil to some of the West's most hostile regimes. But whereas I was sort of looking at a situation where, well, isn't this great, actually? Russia's not providing Iran with the weaponry it's demanded. China's unable to get the oil from Iran that it wants, etc. It seems to me now the suggestion is that the long arm of Russia is quite visible in some of these drone strikes. And indeed, Vladimir Putin may be laughing his way to the bank with the rising cost of oil.
Well, yes, the oil issue is certainly a great concern because he benefits the most from high oil prices. I mean, it's been factored in, the declining cost of oil is factored into the declining Russian war budget. But that's now been given a boost in this way. And obviously what he would like to do is keep this conflict going for as long as possible. And so, as you know, as was stated yesterday, it's quite clear that Russian involvement has taken place in the Iranian drone strikes, in particular with intelligence supply and helping the Iranians target some of the targets they've actually been throwing drones at. So the Russians are involved, they're engaged. We, kind of knew they would be involved in that way. We know their kit isn't up to the job when it comes to actually fighting, but they can cause damage, through the intelligence system and helping the Iranians through the, behind the scenes, basically, which is obviously what they're doing. So as always, Russia is playing the role of spoiler and trying to divide its enemies, because it knows that the longer this goes on, the better it is for Russia.
Now, let's focus things back home to decisions being taken domestically. What do you make of the timing of the government now putting their foot on the accelerator when it comes to the Islamophobia guidance that they want to have circulated? Because it's been joined by a sort of preemptive release of a report by Lord Wolney, which is set to reveal that more than 30 charities and centres, Muslim charities and centres in the UK, have links to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And I find myself asking, now of all times, why on earth are they pushing forward with this legislation?
Well, the legislation part is quite clearly dictated by electoral timetables. We have local elections coming up very soon, and we know how Labour's vote has been slipping within Muslim communities in the UK. They need to show something, as far as they're concerned, that makes people want to vote for them again. And this is clearly the modelling that they have put into their brains and gone, right, this is what we need to do. We need to show that we're dealing with various concerns that we think are real, and we're going to release this right now because it'll help us in May. I mean, we've seen a lot of electorally, sort of directed policies by this Labour government when it comes to foreign policy, and now we're starting to see it when it comes to domestic legislation and ideas as well. And the worry is that we are seeing this sectarianisation of British politics, where people are rushing to sort of bend over in a certain direction because it might mean more votes with certain communities, and that's a huge problem for the country as a whole. And
finally, I find it interesting that, given a lot of the focus at the moment in the news in politics is on geopolitics, is on defence, on foreign affairs, when Reform announced their shadow cabinet, they didn't announce a shadow foreign secretary. However, you, of course, are Reform UK's chief advisor on global affairs. So I wonder if I can get a hint from you of what their foreign policy might look like, because it seems to me that in one interview, Richard Tice sounded rather interventionist, whereas in another, Robert Jenrick sounded quite the opposite. If you were the person advising Reform as the chief advisor on global affairs, what would you be telling them right now as to, if Nigel were to stand behind a podium and make a speech right now about what Britain should be doing during this crisis as part of this war, what would that look like?
Fortunately, you don't need my advice in this respect, because Nigel Farage has already done it. If you look at what he has said as the leader of the party, and that ultimately is what you should be, everyone should be looking at when it comes to determining party policy, he has made it quite clear from day one what Reform's policy on this conflict is. It is to have allowed the Americans to have had their basing rights. It's to express sympathy with the sort of removal of the regime, but also to make it quite clear that Britain is not going to get involved in that beyond defending our national interests and beyond defending our people. So clearly, we needed to have, from day one, have done more to keep our bases secure. We needed to have done more to have kept our people safe. But, to make it quite clear, and he said this, there's no possibility of Britain getting more engaged in this conflict than beyond what our national interests dictate, as he's already stated. So the line is clear, and it's been clear from day one. There's been no flip-flopping on that. It's been a consistent line. The person who's flip-flopped is the Prime Minister, who changed his view on basing rights when he said no at the start and said yes afterwards. And he's fallen actually in line with what Nigel Farage is saying, as he does on so many things, Alex.
So if right now, say Nigel Farage was Prime Minister and America said to the UK, listen, we're going to need to do some sort of ground offensive to protect the Strait of Hormuz, which is what, look, I'm not a a military analyst, but it's what I've read may need to happen ultimately. And that equally, as I've read, apparently our troops, our SAS, would be of the best when it comes to the sort of strategy that would need to be prosecuted. If America turned and said, look, can we have some of your best to help us do this? Would the answer therefore be no?
Well, I think firstly, I don't believe that request would come, because I don't think the Americans have conducted this conflict with a view to getting the British involved in the conflict at all. I think the plans that have been laid out in the Pentagon have made it quite clear that it's an American-Israeli operation from day one. The only thing they need from allies is the ability to use their own bases. And the same, I think, would be true of any ground incursion they might choose to make. I don't think we'd be asked. I don't think they would need us in this respect. And I don't think, as a result, we'd even need to engage in the conversation.
Brilliant talking to you, as per usual, Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Well, the big questions really facing the government is going to be on how they now contend yet again with the rising cost of fuel. And yes, we can all point our fingers and say, well, isn't Vladimir Putin going to do very well out of this? And I kind of think, well, maybe we would have done fairly well out of it as well if we hadn't banned drilling in the North Sea. We're going to be talking about the impact on energy prices here in the United Kingdom and what globalisation might do as well, with the former CEO of Energy UK and ex-Treasury Minister Angela Knight just after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, 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 I think they might have dug him out of his oubliette at last. I am, of course, talking about Ed Miliband, or Ed Military Band, as I think he should now be called, our Energy Secretary, who's been, well, for 14 days, ever since the war began, we learnt that he was against the US using essentially their own bases on our territory. And maybe for good reason. He was worried about there being an impact on our energy bills. Well, they seem to finally have let him out to play after 2 weeks. He was on the Today programme this morning. But the big question is, what are we going to do about the looming energy crisis, and how hard are we going to be hit? I suppose those questions will hinge upon how long this goes on for, how long the Strait of Hormuz remains essentially inoperable. Let's speak now to Angela Knights, former CEO of Energy UK and ex-Treasury Minister. Great to have you back on, Angela. Now, last time we spoke, I remember sort of saying to you, I'd read something that an analyst had said, if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed for around 7 days plus, that's when we start entering a situation that looked a bit like the Arabian oil embargo of 1973, which had an extraordinary impact on the global economy and the United Kingdom. Where are we now in terms of the time frame on that scale? How close to disaster are we?
Much closer than we were a week ago. I had been rather more hopeful that, irrespective of whether one agrees with the action that the US are doing or not, that actually they were going to be able to remove the ability of Iran to fire back, shoot back, take action back. Now, that has not been the case, and it doesn't look like it's going to be the case. So the result of that is, if you look at the map, the Strait of Hormuz, they've got all the ships are parked, one side or another, and it's something like 100 or so tankers would normally go through there each day. And probably the other sort of main thing that has happened is that when the energy groupings released about a third of their stocks, 400 barrels, nothing happened to the oil price. So all this is telling us that actually the real problem is with us, and it's just a question of how worse it gets. And although the UK does not take a lot of its oil or gas out of the Persian Gulf, we are impacted because of the world prices and the consequences of the world prices, as we can see, is carrying on going up.
Yeah, my understanding as well is whereas other countries might have a fortnight of gas reserves, we have about 1.5 days only, meaning we will probably have to be first in the queue when outbidding competitors for the dwindling supplies of oil. How badly could this affect us?
Yeah, well, on the gas bit, actually, all the comparisons are slightly skewed, because it's absolutely right that a lot of other countries have got much more gas storage reserve than we have in the UK. But at the same time, they're not connected to the North Sea. We are, and we take 40+% of our gas out of there. So we are connected to a very big reserve. And should we be doing more about that? Of course we should be doing more about that. I mean, some of these policies which says, oh, we're going to effectively either close down the North Sea because we're not going to let you drill, or we're going to make it so expensive that you're not going to invest, which are the two Miliband and this government policies, are not serving us well at all. We have long-term gas contracts. That is, the UK has long-term gas contracts, both with Norway and both with the US. And so whilst the price is going to be bouncing at the margin, as to how much of that very high price actually is the price that people will have to pay in the UK, it is detached from that, and so it's not entirely certain. But unfortunately, that gas price impacts straight away the price of wholesale electricity, because we always price in the UK wholesale electricity off the most expensive plant. Now, does that sound sensible to you? It isn't sensible, but it is that sort of long-term arrangement. Put all together, it says that the UK is going to be affected. It's going to be affected from supply, it's going to be particularly affected from price. And if ever there was a wake-up call to changing our energy policy, so we've got more homegrown, it's more within our control, we don't have quite as the sort of fluctuations on price that we have at the moment, that tells you we need to do it. And that doesn't mean build more intermittent wind or intermittent solar. It means use our reserves properly. It means develop our North Sea for what there's there rather than be importing. It means change how we calculate our electricity price and put in place the arrangements to build the small-scale nuclear reactors and get on with it.
Now, let's posit that a pig has just flown by the window there, which it has not. But if it had, and Ed Miliband had suddenly turned around and been tantalised by the idea of drill, baby, drill, in order to get ourselves out of what could potentially be a pretty big crisis, how quickly could we get anything online?
Yeah, and I think the honest answer to that is because of the actions that have been taken over these last 2 years or so, it will take time. Because it's not just a question of drilling more, it's a question of utilising what we've got better, i.e. that investment. But because the taxation is now so high on those companies, they have not been investing in the assets they've got, let alone drill some new assets. So you are right to say, is there anything that can be done in the short term? Well, in respect of getting our energy better balanced, the answer is that is a medium-term proposition. It's not a short-term proposition. I think the idea of having us all having some security that, excuse me, that the petrol prices and your heating oil prices aren't going to be artificially high is correct. I was looking at one of those pricing websites this morning for petrol, and it's gone up about 10 pence a litre around me, but it's still pretty stable. That's not too bad. Heating oil, well, I live off heating oil as well because I'm not connected to the gas. Great good fortune. By total accident, I filled up about 4 weeks ago, but it is true that price has gone up. So keeping an eye on that, and I think that begs the question of government, can you do something about that heating oil price? Because people living out in the country will have some considerable difficulties. Don't put yet more tax on petrol. So those sort of short-term things which say, in government hands, you have got some levers, use those levers, don't tax more, keep it steady. I think that is important. But as I say, the reality of expecting a big intervention package on the price of our domestic gas and electricity, I wouldn't hold much hope out for that. What they'll be hoping is that the next time the cap shifts, which is not until July, firstly, we're in summer anyway, so we don't use so much. But secondly, a conclusion will have been done about the Strait of Hormuz, and I suspect that the conclusion and the decent end result there will only be brought about by Arab states and their discussions with Iran. I think Trump is leaving us with a big mess.
You're talking about the price cap being lifted, changed for consumers in July. My understanding is when it comes to certain big businesses, they have energy contracts which aren't as protected as the consumer prices, and that some of those energy contracts will be up for renewal next month. If the government suddenly had to face bailing out or helping assist these companies pay their energy bills, how much might that set us back?
The answer is I absolutely do not know, and I apologise for that. I can't help you out. But the point is correct that industry is running under a completely different set of conditions, and industry is the predominant user of electricity in this country. And as I say, that complex way in which we calculate electricity price means that the cost of electricity is going up all the time. So can government intervene there? I certainly think they will need to do something. After all, what they can do, if they're not prepared to alter algorithms, what they can do is they can take more of those add-on costs which sit on the electricity bill, take them off or suspend them for the time being, so that at least industry is not paying price of electricity plus all the add-ons. That is an early action that they could also take.
Well, I wouldn't hold my breath when it comes to Ed Miliband taking any sensible early action, but there you go. Angela, it's always brilliant having you on the programme. A woman I hold in very high esteem. She knows her onions, doesn't she? By the way, if you want to share your thoughts on the things we're talking about today, well, you can, can't you? You can give us a call, 03444 1000. The brilliant Kieran will take down your details and then give you a call back when it's time to have a chit-chat with me live in the studio. It's your normal network rate, so what are you waiting for? You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send a text message. But if you're going to do that, you've got to write the word talk before you message. We're taking a short break now. After that, we're joined by Big Phil, as I like to call him, the brilliant Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, for his perspective on how this war is progressing and how things might shape up in the future. That's after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. Let's do a couple of messages now. Deborah has said, I don't understand wars or conflict, but I keep hearing, what is Trump's plan? Surely any plans would be kept secret so the enemy can't get ahead of what his plans are. Just asking. Well, yes, Deborah, I kind of agree with you. I can't see a situation where America and Israel go, right, OK, everyone, press conference. We're going to send out a press release. This is exactly what we're going to be doing and when. And the other thing is, he's a bit rich. People like Starmer go, well, we don't know what his plan is. What's your plan, son? You don't know what you're doing, do you? You haven't got a blimmin' clue. In fact, you're ignoring all the advice you're getting as to what you should be doing. We look like flailing idiots. But also, you know, when we decided that Hitler was intolerable and that we had to fight against him, were people saying then, so what's the plan? What happens when we kill Hitler? The problem is with regimes, by and large, is because they are regimes, there isn't some sort of political opposition lying in wait there to say, well, you know, when you knock out that guy, I'll come and take control, because the regime tends to obliterate anybody that they think is going to pose a risk to themselves. So I must admit, this, what is the plan? What is the plan? I'm just like, well, clearly there's some sort of a plan because we're watching it unfold before our very eyes. I'm certainly enjoying it unfold a little bit, I must admit. Living close to Fairford, I've become quite the plane spotter. There I am with my... Every time I hear a plane go over, I get on Flight Tracker, I'm like, oh, that wasn't commercial. Not that you actually need to check Flight Tracker, because you can hear it in those engines, believe me. A B-52 flying over your house makes your teacup rattle in the saucer, and very fun it is as well. Sorry, I'm a bit perverse when it comes to military aircraft. Right, let's speak now to the brilliant Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Great to have you on the show, as always. It seems to me that Iran's tactic has very much been to try and get as many people embroiled in this conflict as possible, in the hope to either create World War III because they're mad theocratic nutjobs, or perhaps to get the world leaning on America and Israel, saying, look, you're going to have to stop this. You're going to have to leave Iran alone because we can't afford the oil prices anymore. But it doesn't seem to really be working. How long do you think that will hold? Or do you think we're going to start seeing cracks in what appears to me a sort of unspoken but tacit support of America and Israeli action?
I think we'll see continued support in the Middle East for what's going on, because Iran has brought the Middle East together in a way that we haven't seen beforehand, and they're enraged. But the longer it goes on, the greater the economic impact that there is, the greater the potential for cracks. But they'll happen outside the Middle East. Remember, when the oil price goes through the roof, all of these Middle East countries, all the sheikhs and everything else, are making huge amounts more money themselves, as Vladimir Putin is now that sanctions have just been lifted on Russian oil for 30 days. And they will be sort of shielded slightly from the global economic shock that is going to hit us in Europe, and has already started to with the massive increase in fuel prices.
I was going to say, I think a lot of the West, especially the UK, have not exactly been particularly supportive of America anyway. But let's talk now about the shadow of Russia in all of this, because John Healey's definitely implying that, well, it looks as if Russia's given, at the very least, practical advice to Iran about where to aim their missiles, particularly against foreign military bases in the region. Do you think it goes deeper than that? My understanding was when Iran sort of picked up the phone to the Kremlin and said, can you help us and send us some missiles, rockets, etc., the answer was, well, sorry, no, you're by yourself. But do you think that actually there is a deeper connection between the two?
Oh, there's a hugely deeper connection. We have to remember that Iran was helping Russia out with its war in Ukraine, supplying the Shahed 136 drones, then the technology, then enabling Russia to manufacture them themselves. But what Russia's been doing is manufacturing the drones, improving a lot of the guidance systems in them and their ability to get through Ukrainian electronic warfare, sending that technology back to Iran. And the Shahed 136 drone that was fired by, almost certainly by Hezbollah, or an Iranian-backed Iraqi-based militia that hit the sovereign base area in Cyprus, had in it a Russian guidance system. So there's definitely been that technology transfer. And of course, one of the biggest fears would be if that technology transfer went into nuclear technology as well, because we had, when the nuclear talks were going on, the Iranian team allegedly said to Steve Witkoff, the American special representative, that they had 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. You do not need 60% enriched uranium for anything other than military means. For power, you only need it to be enriched to less than 20%. And therefore, to make that as a statement when you've got nuclear discussions going on is a bit like coming in and punching the person on the other side and you're starting a fight. And that's what the Iranians did. And this is where this fight is now ongoing.
Talking about the enriched uranium, my understanding is there's a belief that there's a number of 60% enriched uranium stores somewhere deep underground. Is it Isfahan? And yet America hasn't been using the beautiful B-2s and their bunker buster bombs so far to penetrate anything underground.
They have. They have.
Yes. Okay. So where do we stand? Because I thought there was potentially some sort of ground mission that might need to be used in order to get access to that uranium, or more importantly, prevent Iran from getting access to it.
Yeah, I know the Americans are looking at all options, and this is where you were talking about plans beforehand. There are lots of plans, and we're never going to know the end state that there is, because you're telling the enemy what you're trying to finally achieve, and they can work back from that to disrupt it. There will be options to go and secure it on the ground if necessary. There'll be other ground options that are being planned, but the Americans won't want to do that. If you've got something stored in an underground bunker somewhere, the targeting people will be looking at exactly where it is. They'll be looking at the geology around there. They'll be looking at the entrances and exits, because you have to something that takes the uranium into there, and people have to gain access to get it out. That means that there are shafts, and if you've got something buried hundreds of meters underground, well, then just collapse the tunnels that get people in and out, and that means it stays buried. Now, that's what the Americans tried to do with their B-52 and their B-2, dropping the bunker buster bombs last year when they attacked Iran's nuclear capability. They'll try and do that again this year, and there have been some GBU-57s, these bunker busters used against underground targets that have been storing a lot of their ballistic missiles and ballistic missile launchers. So they've sealed them underground, and they'll be doing the calculations that they need to work out just how many bombs, how many bombers that they're going to need to try and seal the nuclear material underground, and confirming it's there, because they don't want to waste lots of effort and then suddenly find that the Iranians have moved it.
Now, my understanding, since I've become a right old plane spotter, not that I wasn't anyway, is that the B-52s coming in, the big old stratofortresses, oh, I love them, that they are able now to go in and drop gravitational bombs as a result of the targeting on Iranian missile defence systems, which could bring down the cost of operations for America, that potentially gravitational bombs can be far more precision targeted, but also cost a lot less than those that have to be launched from either the ground or further afield. Does this mean that, you know, if we're looking at a situation of an air war of attrition, that actually, fingers crossed, God willing, that Iran might run out of their kinetic supplies before America does?
Iran will run out of their kinetic supplies before America does. America's stocks are huge. And you're 100% right. You've been able to go in with less... not the very expensive precision weapons. You know, a lot of the airdrop bombs can be guided now, but in a much more cost-effective way than firing high-precision missiles and TLAM cruise missiles in. And the first thing that you have to be able to do that is what's called total air superiority. And this is why the Americans last year, when they went in, the first part of the mission was what's called SEAD, suppression of enemy air defense. They destroyed Iran's air defense capability, and anything that they built up again at the beginning of this air war, they've destroyed it once again. So the Americans, the Israelis, can now fly over Iran with impunity. You know, Iran has got nothing left that they can do anything to stop the Americans or the Israelis flying over it, and you know, any other nation that decides to join in as well, and that will allow the Americans to bring their B-52 bombers in, or I used to call them grid square removal devices, because you know, they drop a bomb load and a complete grid square, 1 square kilometre disappears underneath.
Oh, I love this. Honestly, I'm having such fun, like standing in my back garden, like waiting to see things fly over. It's brilliant. Now, I understand, Mr. Ingram, that you've got a little series out with us at the moment called Talk War. Should we have a little look?
Rising political game seems to be the Greens at the minute with Zach Polanski. He turned around and he said he's going to solve everything by sitting down and talking to Putin. Is he naive?
Well, yeah, naive and wrong. I mean, how many times? That's like saying we're going to negotiate with the supreme leader. You know, how many times do we have to be shown that these conversations are not taken at face value? How many people have to die because they're not taken in good faith before everyone realizes that it's absolutely extraordinary that you could even contemplate sitting down with Putin at a negotiating table now after everything that's gone on.
And there's also an element of arrogance, isn't there? Because he clearly comes to thinking, I have something which no one else has brought to this situation. I can negotiate with him. And you think, well, Chamberlain thought that with Hitler, and it proved not to be the case. So, you know, no, it's an absurdity by somebody who knows nothing and wants to appear to know everything. Sadly, I don't think we can dismiss him as a hollow threat electorally, but that may not be the case in a couple of years' time. I'm not sure he has the legs.
Oh, may not be the case in a couple of years' time. From what I understand, the Greens are set to snatch a load of councils in London to begin with, at the very least. Tell us more about Talk War, Philip. When can people watch it? How can they watch it? What sort of stuff are you talking about? Other than
well, Well, I think the clue is in the title. We're talking about the conflicts that are around the world, but we're trying to bring in the understanding from the military perspective, the political perspective. We're talking geopolitics, we're talking national politics, we're talking military stuff. And we recorded the first episode yesterday, and that's a snippet that you've seen from that. And I'm hoping it goes live today on the Talk YouTube channel. And when it does, it will go out across the Talk social media channels. Snippets are already going out, like that one we've just seen. And it'll go out across my social media. And of course, the Ted, who is producing you, has produced this. So he's sitting in the gallery there, smiling through the window, going, "Oh, you're not talking about me, are you?" And this is all down to Ted's great thinking, his idea. And he's pulled with two fantastic guests yesterday, with Tom Sharp, OBE, a former Royal Navy commander, and Elliot Wilson, a former clerk in the House of Commons, and effectively he ran the Defence Committee, Defence Select Committee, and that's what a clerk does. You facilitate and you run it. So he knows about politics and defence, and Tom knows about military stuff and navy things. And of course, we've got naval ships in the news at the minute. So whenever it comes out, I urge people to go and listen to it, watch it, download it, and share it amongst as many people as you can.
Well, there you go. I will definitely be tuning in. And if you ever want me to come on, I'll come with my Top Trumps military aircraft. We can all have a thrilling live game together. Thank you ever so much, Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer and host of Talk War. Right, OK. After the next break, it's your opportunity to let me know what you think about what is going on in the Middle East, or indeed what is going on here back at home. 03444 991 1000 is the number to call. It's your normal network rate, so come on, phone me up. Let's have a chit-chat, shall we? 8722 is the number if you want to send me a text message. If you're going to do that, you have to write the word talk before you send your text. You can also use the long number 03444 99 1000 to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a little voice note on WhatsApp. So roll up, roll up. Keep your thoughts coming in. I've already got a stack of messages to read out here, and hoping to chat to some of you just after this.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now, this is a good competition, isn't it? Sad I can't enter it. I'll probably get in trouble if I phone up and try and get my mitts on this prize, because we're giving you the chance to win 2 hospitality tickets to the British Grand Prix on Sunday, the 5th of July. You lucky things, with the full Racing Green trackside experience. It's the ultimate setup for race day. Oh, this is just making me even more bitter that I can't enter it myself. You'll get exclusive grandstand seats at the Loop and Village corners, plus inner track access to watch the drivers arriving at the paddock. That is so cool. You also get access to the hospitality shuttle bus for easy on-site transport. Oh, believe me, driving into Silverstone is a bit of a mish. Racing simulators and live music between sessions, all-day food and an open bar. Oh, this is how you could win all that good stuff.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 20th of March 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Well, there you go. I'm sure in the T's and C's it says presenters aren't allowed to enter. But as you can win 2 hospitality tickets, if your better half doesn't want to go, you know who to call. Probably not allowed to say that either. Anyway, good luck if you are entering. Right, let's do some calls now. We've got 2 Stuarts on the line. Let's first of all speak to Stuart in Belfast. Hi, Stuart in Belfast.
Good morning, Alex.
Good morning to you.
Just I heard the comments there about Zach Polanski thinks he'd have the ability to go over and negotiate with Putin. Now, this is the man. This is the guy that was able to Harley Street to hypnotise ladies to have bigger breasts. So maybe he has got the ability. Well, if not then, maybe he could go over and work that magic onto Putin and give him a big set of breasts or something to make it more livable to the West.
Oh, so the next time Putin brings out his sort of, you know, tough man wrestling a bear, riding bare-chested on a horse, we can all admire his moves. It is rather crazy, but this is the scary thing is that lunatic and that party, which as far as I'm concerned has been hijacked as a vessel for Islamism, is set to do extremely well. And how much is that going to imperil security in Britain? Very alarming developments.
Apparently populism doesn't exist on the left, only on the right, where everything else is more diversity based on the left. There's no such thing as populism on the left at all.
Oh, well, it's not very popular with me, that's for sure. Stuart in Belfast, thank you ever so much for your brilliant call. Let's speak now to Stuart in London. Good morning.
Good morning, it's good to speak to you again.
Great to have you back on.
A function again, well, where we were last time. Price of petrol. If it goes by the world oil prices, as we keep getting told, why is the price of America a quarter is over here?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person. But I think when it comes to the wholesale prices, America obviously produces its own oil and gas, doesn't it? So I don't know whether that means because they're not having to buy it from the market because it is their own, that is why it is much cheaper. That would be my assumption anyway. We have to go to other countries and say, please, can we buy? So that's where we are then stuck in the trap of having to buy it at whatever price it happens to be at that moment. Whereas if you already own it, if you're drilling it out of your own territory, one assumes you don't then buy it off yourself. That would be my answer, although I can't claim to actually know that for sure without the help of a quick Google. But it is also, you know, we're talking a lot about, oh, well, you know, this is going to help Putin. Oh, he's now going to make a lot of money from that oil. And I sort of think to myself, I'm kind of jealous that we're not able to sell our own oil to countries who aren't blessed or privileged with gas fields and oil reserves as we are in the North Sea. Instead, we're buying it from Norway, pretty much from just, you know, a few waves along from where our own territorial supplies would be. And come to think of it, you know, if we were able to buy and sell that on the international stage, how much more geopolitical leverage would we have? Not only would it bring down our energy bills for manufacturing in particular, which then, of course, those costs are passed on to the consumer anyway. But we would have so much influence over allies saying, like, well, you know, you need us now, you need the oil, so these are our conditions for selling it. And if the price goes up super high, as it looks as if it's going to do even more, then brilliant. We could be putting all that money into a sovereign wealth fund. Win-win. No wonder Ed Miliband has been out of sight, yet not really out of mind for the past couple of weeks. Stuart, there you go. I hope that has semi-answered your question, but you will have to fact-check me. That is my assumption on why America's price is much lower than ours, because essentially they don't have to buy it wholesale, do they? If they produce it, they're not having to go to other countries and say, can we have some, please? Stuart, thank you ever so much for your call. Let's do a couple of messages now. Alex, the oil and gas prices are soaring, allowing Putin to fund his military machine. We're sitting on billions of pounds worth of oil revenues, and mad Red Ed is refusing to use it. I want to know how much tax revenues we're losing every single day we let this lunatic run our energy policy, says Chris in Newbury. I mean, it's mad, isn't it? Yeah. Again and again, they have been warned about the importance of energy self-sufficiency. And here we go. He just, you know, blindly continues concreting over oil wells, of sabotage. He's basically a domestic terrorist, isn't he? Sabotaging our own energy security in the middle of a war. And do we think he's going to buckle? Do we think he's going to see the light? Probably not. The only light he's going to see is the one that's going to be flashing on the dashboard of the country, warning that we're desperately low on being able to fill up our tanks. Morning, Alex. It's Kevin from Nottingham. Good morning, Kevin. We all knew Starmer ignored advice. They're so arrogant, thinking they're legally protected. And now he's admitted to knowing. It doesn't make him honest. He only said it before it came out. I'm sick of his lying, his voice. And I can't say that about anybody else. So I'm sick of everything about him, quite frankly. I think he's going to be in a spot of bother come May. I think when those elections happen in Scotland, in Wales, at the local level, and given how much our economy could well be hit, what's Rachel Reeves doing? They're not really talking to us, are they, about what their strategy is going to be? Are they going to bail us out? Are they going to be handing out fuel allowances again? Are they going to be taking off VAT from fuel? Are they going to be decoupling electricity from wholesale gas prices? Are they going to remove the green levies to protect us? What's our plan? Forget what Donald Trump's plan is. I want to know what we're going to do to keep the lights on and to prevent our economy going to hell in a handcart. That'd be nice to know. Right, keep your thoughts coming in. 03444 99 1000 is the number to call. You can use that number to send me a WhatsApp message, or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number if you'd rather send me a text. If that's your choice, then you've got to write the word talk before you write your message. We're going to be taking a short break, but don't go anywhere. There's still 2 more packed hours to come. Put the kettle on and I'll see you.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and welcome back to the show, and I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on everything going on. How useless are this government? How embarrassing are they? I mean, what I realise actually, and I don't want to alarm you because I don't think this is going to happen, fingers crossed, but if I was a hostile nation looking at the United Kingdom as a fancy bit of real estate, geostrategically positioned between Europe and America, indeed between Scandinavia and Africa, with very rich seas, even oil reserves. If I was looking at, well, you know, I want to cause the UK a spot of bother, wow, it's quite clear we don't have anything to defend ourselves, isn't it? We now, you know, it's been revealed in front of the eyes of the world that it takes us the best part of 5 days to get anything out of port that even works when it comes to our Navy vessels, because, you know, ports don't work Saturdays and Sundays and outside the hours of 9 to 5, and most of our stuff is in maintenance. And the shrinking size of our fleet since the 1950s, when it was around 280 combined naval vessels, to shy of 15 today. I mean, what on earth? We used to be one of the greatest seafaring nations. I mean, what are we? It's blimmin' alarming. Right, let's talk now to the brilliant David Patrikarakis, who's a journalist and columnist in the Daily Mail. David, it's great to have you on the programme. I have been keenly following your work. Let's talk, first of all, about, let's bring that the focus on Iranian power, or soft power, let's say, here in the United Kingdom. Because as they seem to dwindle militarily, if they're not able to keep lobbing drones and missiles or using their proxies to try and drag more and more of the war into, the countries into the kinetic element of this war, my fear is they will start using lone wolf attacks, IRGC sleeper cells. And there's going to be a report by Lord Wolney talking about Iranian influence, in fact, direct influence from the IRGC here in the United Kingdom through a network of 30 charities and centres with direct links to the regime. How alarming is that we essentially have the long arm of Tehran here in the United Kingdom?
Alex, you're spot on, and unfortunately it's not one arm, it's at least 10. Look, a while ago, I actually did an investigation into this. I went to and walked around various of the Iranian regime's institutions in central London. I called it Little Tehran, in fact. We have an Iranian school linked to the Islamic Republic where small children have been singing, glorifying martyrs. They do everything but pretty much publicly pledge their allegiance to the Ayatollahs. We've got an institution linked to the IRGC itself. And these institutions, Alex, they got money during COVID. They got government furlough money. This is completely insane. Absolutely insane. So we are right to be worried. Look, we have to understand something. Anyone who thinks that Iran is a faraway country of which we know little, that doesn't concern us, the Iranians have tried to assassinate people on British soil, dissident journalists. They've sent assassins to Britain. They've tried to kill, and then they've got out of the country immediately. We couldn't even stop them. They came onto the street, stabbed someone, left the same day. So you are absolutely right. This is a serious problem. And what is so frustrating, Alex, is it's a very easy problem to solve. I mean, you could start by not giving them hundreds of thousands of furlough money, but just shut them down. We know where they are. We have a problem with sleeper cells. I'm sure they exist. And as you say, the more that Iran is hammered kinetically in conventional warfare, the more it's going to do this sort of asymmetric warfare. Let's not forget, this is their modus operandi. For decades, they have fought the West, not directly, but through their proxies, through Hamas, through Hezbollah, through the Houthis. The Houthis are doing everything they can for the last 2 years to destroy global shipping and therefore global commerce. Hamas and Hezbollah are a danger not just in the Middle East, but abroad. And as ever, Britain is doing nothing. And I cannot understand it, but it is foolish and it is dangerous.
Now, one thing that concerns me is if we've got a IRGC sleeper cells, we certainly have sleeper cells, whichever Islamist organisation or terrorist organisation they're attached to. My concern is whether or not these people will be able to rise up and start attacking some of our air bases here in the United Kingdom.
Well, seeing as we seem unable to defend ourselves now and have to rely on the French, I think that's entirely possible. I just don't understand it. Look, how many warning signs, and they're not even signs anymore, how many warnings, how many attacks are we going to have to suffer before we take this seriously? Look, we are in a war whether we like it or not. You know, to paraphrase a famous quote, you may not be interested in war, you may not be interested in Iran, but believe me, Iran is very much interested in you. So we need to act. This regime is being hammered. I've been looking at the waves of strikes. There's a lot of negativity, and I can understand some of it about a clear plan, but they are degrading by wave the differing layers of the security apparatus of the Islamic Republic. They're going to respond, and they're going to respond in the way that they always do, terror.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, talking about, you know, I tend to agree with you. All these people banging on about what's the plan. I'm watching everything taking place, and I think that the way that these offences are being prosecuted is almost like poetry. I think it's one of the sort of best military strategies I've ever seen, quite frankly. I don't know whether you tend to agree with me on that. And the continuation from Trump 1.0 to today, I sort of think, well, he's had a plan for a long time. America's had a plan for a very long time when it comes to Iran. The question has always been when it was going to start.
Absolutely. Look, unlike most people, I've been studying Iran for 20 years. I studied Persian in Tehran many years ago, and I have contacts in the security services. What we've seen is something clear. On the first day of strikes, they took out Ayatollah. They deservedly ended his wretched life, and as much as the leadership as they could do. The next wave was to take out as many IRGC facilities as they could, and the ballistic missiles. Now, if what you're seeing now is interesting, now security sources have told me, and by the way, these are people looking at the feeds in real time in Tehran and other cities, Western Security Service, that the city is just a massive checkpoints everywhere. Now, you've seen in the last 2 days, they are droning those checkpoints, and they are taking out the street thugs, the Basij militia. All of this is done with a clear plan for when this stops, which I suspect should be soon, that the Iranian people have as much chance as they can to rise up. Now, will it work? I don't know. The regime is still embedded. But to say that there's no plan is simply untrue if you look at actually what's happening and stop being hysterical.
Well, I agree with you entirely. I mean, whoever said during World War II, well, we better not go fight Hitler because who knows what's going to come after him? I mean, you know, it to me is a mad, ridiculous question being used as a distraction from the very people who don't have a plan, the Starmer group. Talking about the Ayatollah, what's going on with the son, the new Ayatollah? Is he alive? Is he in a coma?
Well, look, if he was fine, he would have given a video address. I can understand him not wanting to poke his head above ground. An Israeli source said to me when he was elected, he won't make it to Friday prayer. So the Israelis will go for him. But to not give a video message, because if you don't do that, everyone just assumes that there's something wrong with you. So I can't really see any other reason for him only releasing a written statement, not giving us any proof of that he's alive or at least well, or at least vaguely functioning. It does seem very suspicious. So we don't know, but it is extremely, extremely dodgy. I'm hearing he's in a coma, he's lost a leg like everybody else, but whatever, it doesn't look good for him, and I'm very pleased about that.
Is there a risk attached to this, though, that there's potentially, who knows how much they've got in terms of stockpiles, but a load of theocratic nut jobs who don't really have any central commanding force anymore with access to very lethal weaponry in Iran? They seem to be chucking things even further afield, trying to drag everybody they can into this war. There's even a suggestion now that they could potentially get their drones as far as California.
Look, it's absolutely possible. I mean, you said it, right? Iran may not have unlimited stockpiles of enriched uranium, but it does have unlimited stockpiles of nut jobs, as you rightly point out. Look, Iran has very effective drones. I've been attacked by my positions, not me personally. I've been attacked by Iranian drones in southern Ukraine, eastern Ukraine, Iraq, and Israel. So yeah, their technology is basic, but it's highly effective. Look, there's something else when you think about all this. At some point, the Iranians are going to want to have a rest from this. What will happen is, I think, once it ends, they'll claim victory. They'll say they came to take, they came to destroy us. We're still here. We replaced Khamenei with Khamenei. We've won, but they'll want a breather. I'd be very surprised if Iran really wants to start sending drones to California. I think that'll bring the whole world of pain that they probably just need some respite from now.
Is there a risk? Because it seems to me Iran's intention is to make things as difficult for the whole world as possible in the hope of either creating World War III because they're sort of eschatological lunatics, or indeed to try and get the rest of the world leaning on America and Israel to cease attacking the regime in order that the Strait of Hormuz can be opened up. It seems that Iran is more than comfortable with blackmailing the world. It doesn't seem to be working thus far. But is there a risk as the oil crisis deepens that some countries might start saying, OK, come on now, you've had your fun, time to put the weapons down?
Absolutely. Look, Iran has very few points of leverage. One of them is the Straits of Hormuz, which actually I was on a few weeks ago, near the beginning of the year, last month. It is the world's key energy choke point. 20% of the world's oil passes through it. And clearly that strategy, as you correctly say, Alex, to sort of bomb promiscuously attack all of its Gulf neighbours, pretty much, was designed to bring pressure to bear on the United States. From what I can gather, the Emiratis are furious anyway, and it's probably been counterproductive. But there's something that people miss as well, which is if Iran blockades the Straits of Hormuz, it suffers as well, right? At the moment, it's passing its own oil through, but if this continues, the Americans are not going to allow Iran's ships to go through, and no one else's. They'll start hammering those, I'd suspect. So this is not cost-free for Iran, and oil's the one thing it has. Its incompetence, its mismanagement, its corruption has meant that all of its other industries are essentially destroyed. So this is costing Iran as well. If the mullahs are determined to survive, and let's not forget this is their goal above all else, then once a break comes, I think they'll take it. They'll claim victory like they always do, but I think they'll take it, and they'll need to get the straits open for their own sake. And understand something else. If this stops and the straits open, it's not an immediate return to normality, right? There's lots of tankers backed up, there's lots of chaos. Who knows if they're mines? It'll take a few weeks to get things back to normal. So it's a shock for everybody. And yeah, look, this is a risk. This is a colossal gamble, but we are dealing with Trump and Netanyahu with gamblers. But also, in the end, for good or bad, leaders that act, they act. And we in Britain have a leader that cannot act, even with the colossal majority he has. It's absolutely astonishing.
I mean, I'm looking at what Trump has done, and you're right, it is a big gamble. It's a blimmin' bold strategy. It seems to me this isn't just about, well, let's stop Iran in its tracks. It seems that he wants to reshape the entire world order. I kind of see a very elegant, conjoined strategy when it comes to breaking apart the anti-Western axis. But like you said, a very ambitious plan. Do you think it's going according to plan right now? From what you're looking at, because I'm an amateur in all of this, but what I'm seeing beginning to shape out is something that I think looks very sophisticated, very well thought through, very well choreographed, following a chronological development. First of all, getting rid of Maduro. Every time Iran tries to make a move, we're going to lace the Strait of Hormuz with mines. Well, guess what? Well, too late. We've taken out the ships that were going to put those mines down. Do you think that things are going essentially according to plan, or is Donald Trump making those noises on things like Truth Social because he has to?
Well, look, it's both. Donald Trump will say things are successful, but let's look at what has happened so far. And there's 2 points here. The first is let's look at what's happened so far. So after October 7th, Yahya Sinwar, the loathsome head of Hamas, now thankfully dead, thought that this would change the Middle East. Well, it did. But it ended up by being Hezbollah degraded, Hamas degraded, Assad falling, and the Iranian regime on its knees. Donald Trump, correctly, as you say, has also taken out another pretty reprehensible dictator in Maduro. Right now, so far has all seemed to work. Gamble after gamble has worked. So let's see. It's a big gamble and things can go wrong, but I would say that so far the Middle East is a better place in terms of the proxy forces and regimes that are gone, and Venezuela is better. And there's something else. This is my second point. We have to ask something else, Alex. Look at Iran. What we tried before didn't work for decades, did it? For decades, we tried diplomacy, which is fair. We tried to look for some sort of reform, and Iran just got worse and worse and worse.
No, I agree. You can't negotiate with a terrorist. I think this has been a long time coming, massively overdue. Frankly, it would have been easier done sooner, in my humble opinion. David, in my humble opinion as well, you're the best in the biz. I adore your columns, and it's been a real privilege having you on the show today. The brilliant David Patrikarakis, journalist and columnist at the Daily Mail. If you're impressed by that interview, see, he's just got such a good perspective. He doesn't listen to all these other people. What is that plan? All these so-called journalists who just repeat things that someone else said 2 weeks ago because they haven't done their own research, haven't got a clue about the ways of the world, just get Trump derangement syndrome. There you go. I would follow him. I hugely recommend him. Right, OK, we're going to be focusing our attention on the Mandelson files after the break. Oh, it don't rain, it pours for Sir Keir Starmer, doesn't it? But if you want to have a talk to us about anything that we're discussing today, then please be my guest. 0344 499 1000 is the number to dial. It's normal network rate in terms of charges, so basically it doesn't cost you any extra, does it? You can also use that to send me a WhatsApp, leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number if you'd rather send a text message. If you're going to do that, write the word talk before you text. We're having a little breather now, but don't you dare go anywhere because there's a heck of a lot more to discuss today.
Good morning to you. This is Tour the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just breaking news in the last couple of moments. Extraordinary news. Not just that the police have arrived at the Sandringham estate where Prince Andrew, as was now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, is currently living since being thrown out of the Windsor estate. The police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's an extraordinary revelation. And certainly what's been contained in the Epstein files as released in the last few weeks. It's his 66th birthday today. What a birthday present that is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
He's told lie after lie after lie. Well, that was what Kevin Badenoch was saying about our Prime Minister and the appointment of his pal, Lord Mandelson, as the American ambassador. Staggeringly, we were supposed to be getting all these Mandelson files, and only about 1% has actually been released so far. And of the bits that have made it into the public domain, a heck of a lot of it has been redacted, including what would be the red box notes. So when files go to the Prime Minister, it says, well, the security services are warning about reputational damage because of Mandy's connections to Epstein and his dodgy lobbying firm, who's basically paying both sides, and potentially his alarming connections to hostile regimes such as China. What you'd expect with this little word of advice would be Sir Keir Starmer to note down his response to that. But we haven't been given that, so we don't know what it was. But I certainly think that something smells rather dodgy. Let's speak now to Paul Embry, writer and a trade unionist. Paul, great to have you back on the programme. I mean, it's not looking good for Starmer if he's actually effectively lied in front of Parliament. This is what the Conservative Party are now asking to be investigated now, whether when he stood up and told the Commons that all the protocols were properly followed in the appointment of Mandelson, was he telling the truth?
Well, good morning, Alex. He did say that Mandelson, as you said, had told lie after lie after lie. I mean, I have to say, in this first tranche that's been released of these documents, there doesn't seem to be any smoking gun. There doesn't seem to be anything that says Mandelson deliberately lied or lied to such an extent as is being claimed. But of course, there's more to come. And if it transpires that in later releases of the documents, there's evidence that actually Mandelson did tell lie after lie, then it's probably true that on that point, Starmer is on safe ground. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But I don't think he's on safe ground in terms of the wider issue about why he appointed Peter Mandelson to that position in the first place. There was, as was pointed out to him, a clear reputational risk. And I have to say, not just in relation to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Let's not forget that this was a man who had been sacked twice when he served in cabinet in the Labour Party previously. And in my view, I mean, I've been around the Labour Party for 30 odd years as a member. And I think that Peter Mandelson, frankly, has always been a pernicious influence in the Labour Party. He's always been scheming. He's always been Machiavellian. He's always mixed with the wrong sort of people. He was part of that new Labour clique who drove the sort of liberal progressive worldview that created a rupture between the party and its working class base. I think he has an awful lot to answer for. So he should never have got near that job in the first place, frankly, as the ambassador.
So why do you think, I mean, you know, we can only speculate unless the people who've made those decisions give us answers. Speculate is all we can do. But why do you think they did do it, given how precarious it was, given how risky a decision it was? It seems to me there's something funny going on here, and every time I stick it in my machine and try and understand all these relationships between Richard Hermer, Lord Hermer, who is the unelected Attorney General, to their old buddies Philip Sands, who was the person overseeing the Chagos negotiations, to Lord Mandelson's relationships with Beijing. We knew from the Epstein files, I mean, regardless of his relationship with Epstein, what those files also revealed was when he was going on formal state visits to Beijing, he was asking to go off grid to do his own extracurricular activities. And it seems to me the common denominator that keeps popping up is China.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think it's something a bit more straightforward. I think it's because at the time, you know, let's be blunt, shortly after the Labour government came to power, it was already on the rocks in terms of, you know, popular support. It was a loveless landslide that it won, and Starmer's personal popularity rating started to plunge pretty quickly, as did the wider parties. And I think that what they did is they probably looked at what New Labour achieved, in inverted commas, and probably thought actually the likes of Mandelson are blessed with the type of political acumen and wisdom that we don't have, because we're pretty experienced as that sort of thing. And they called on Alistair Campbell. They've been quite open. Campbell has certainly been quite open that Starmer has, you know, called on his expertise from time to time. And they looked at Mandelson and thought, yeah, he was part of a project that won 3 elections for the Labour Party. He must know how it's done. We need him inside the tent in some way. And they probably thought as well, look, you know, we need a big beast. We need a political appointment to be able to deal with the Trump administration. But it was completely the wrong thing, in my view, simply because of the, you know, Mandelson's past. And this was a guy, let's not forget, who represented Hartlepool, about as blue collar a working class place as you could wish to have. A northern industrial town, or deindustrialized town, but lived a life that was so far removed from the people that he was representing, you know, mixing with oligarchs and so on. So when the revelations came out, Alex, that, you know, he'd done the type of things that he did, a real political scandal, you know, releasing market-sensitive and confidential data during an economic crisis to a convicted child sex offender who had been personally bankrolling him. Some of us were not surprised at that, simply because of the history of the man. But I think that was the reason why they appointed him, but it has backfired massively.
It's definitely backfired politically for Starmer, and it keeps people like me very entertained following this story. But how much do you think it's going to impact upon them electorally? Big elections coming up. They already face, some might project, obliteration in Scotland and probably losing Wales, the very first time since the Senedd was even created. But do you think this is going to weigh heavily on their minds in the run-up to May?
I don't think so. I think things like this, although they are genuine political scandals, I don't necessarily think they're uppermost in the minds of voters when they go to vote in elections. I think the key things, certainly at the moment for voters, they're thinking about the state of the economy, which is flatlining, and the impact on their living standards, particularly now in the context of what's going on in Iran and the fact that we're likely to see a downturn in economic growth, and we're likely to see rampant inflation potentially. They're looking at immigration. I mean, polls are showing that that is now the top concern for voters, and the government still hasn't got a grip on that, certainly in terms of the small boats at the moment. They're looking at things like NHS waiting lists, which are not coming down anywhere as near as they should do, as quickly as they should do. They're looking at the fact we've got a national emergency in terms of a housing crisis. These are the things that I think really matter to voters on the doorstep and when they go into the polling booths. If Labour was to put some of those things right, then it's got a fighting chance, but it's a long, long way from that at the moment. The Mandelson thing, important though it is, won't be a key factor at election time, I'm sure of that.
Well, the problem facing the Labour Party now is, you're right, the things that the majority of voters want the Labour Party to do are things that aren't natural to the Labour Party's DNA, and at the same time they will regard their greatest existential threats coming from parties that are further to the left than they are. Is the risk that the Labour Party will try and have to move to the left wing in order to cover off the Green Party, Plaid Cymru in Wales, SNP in Scotland, and in doing so essentially be given the United Kingdom exactly the wrong sort of treatment for the problems it's facing?
The Labour Party's key task at the moment, Alex, is to win back those millions of lost, once loyal working class voters in places like the Red Wall, you know, the party's old industrial heartlands, traditional working class provincial Britain. Everything else comes after that. If the party decided that actually we're going to write those people off because, you know what, they're probably going to vote for reform anyway, so we'll tack towards the Green Party, you know, the kind of much more urban, liberal, young, cosmopolitan, progressive vote. I don't think that would be enough to get the Labour Party over the line electorally anyway, if it won all of those voters. But B, frankly, it would be an abandonment of the party's historical mission, which was to speak not just for middle-class urban liberals, but actually to speak for the voiceless, working-class, blue-collar people of this country. The Labour Party has got to focus laser-like on winning those people back. If it doesn't, then frankly, it's not the Labour Party that we once all knew.
I think it hasn't been the Labour Party we once saw new for quite a while, to be honest with you, Paul. Thank you ever so much. It's always a pleasure catching up with you, Paul Embry there, trade unionist and author of Despised: Why the Modern Left Loathes the Working Class. Right, just a reminder, bit of housekeeping now. If you want to get in touch with the show, then you better get out your biro and take down these digits. 03444 499 1000 is the number. If you'd like to have a chit chat with me on the phone, we'll be taking your calls the last segment of this hour. So roll up, register your interest now. Kieran is poised and waiting. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp message, or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number to send me a text message. If you're going to do that, write the word talk before you text. Just going to have a little respite right now, but don't go anywhere because I'll be back anon.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk. Oh.
Hello and welcome back. Now, rather tragically, on Thursday, there was an active shooter reported who was attacking a synagogue in Michigan after also crashing an explosive-filled truck into the synagogue. Well, thankfully, the suspect, who's been named as Ayman Mohammed Ghazal, was fatally shot by security officers after driving through a hallway at Temple Israel in West Bloomfield Township near Detroit. And also, thankfully, nobody was seriously injured in the attack. What we know about the perpetrator was it was a 41-year-old gunman who was born in Lebanon but came to the US in 2011 on an immediate relative visa as the spouse of a US citizen. Well, this, of course, raises the rather frightening, harrowing spectre of domestic terrorism and lone wolf attacks connected to the Iranian regime as they continue to effectively lose the war on their home soil. Will they start striking out on the streets of countries such as America and Great Britain? Well, let's speak now to Alex Gandler, who's a spokesman of the Israeli embassy. Great to have you on the programme, Alex. When you look at stories like this, and of course we recently had the attack on the synagogue in Manchester, it must be of great concern to you as for the safety of fellow Jews in the United Kingdom and indeed in America. But let's focus on the United Kingdom initially.
Hi, Alex. Shalom. Yes, we don't have all the details from what happened in Michigan yesterday, but we can definitely draw some conclusions, or at least look at it in the same perspective we looked at what happened in Manchester and Bondi, the 4 Iranians that were apprehended by the Met Police just as the war was starting 13 days ago. Yes, it seems that anti-Semitism and attacks against Jews and Israelis worldwide are resuming. The extremism that we saw on the streets, both of London and the UK in general, but also of other cities around the world, is exploding. And these are the results.
What is your reaction to the banning of the Al-Quds March here in London, although it will still be allowed to take place as a static demonstration, i.e. not people walking around the streets, but standing in one place and shouting their awful slogans? I mean, it staggers me. Well, it doesn't stagger me, sadly. It horrifies me, but unfortunately doesn't surprise me that we have plenty of people wanting to turn up to this march. I mean, where have we gone so wrong in the United Kingdom? Can it be reversed?
I truly hope so. We welcome the banning of this March of Hate. By the way, this March of Hate is happening today in Tehran, where the leaders of the Islamic regime are marching the streets, burning flags of Western countries. Yes, as you have on your screen now. They have imported the same hatred to the UK and to other places around the world. This march that has been, and I've heard it's been going on for 40 years. Let's think together what happened 40 years ago. The optimism of the fall of the Soviet Union, the optimism of this globalized world that is shattering as we're speaking now. We can see it has been completely manipulated by maleficent forces such as the Islamic regime. We are democracies. We try to be nice and to play along with everyone. Unfortunately, it's being used by the forces that are trying to impose their values on us.
And onwards from this is this staggering report that is due to come out, which is showing that the Iranian regime has made a systematic effort to build soft power infrastructure in the UK via the charitable sector. This is a 109-page report called Under the Influence, which has exposed that a network of around 30 UK-based charities have been used to spread the Ayatollah's ideology to foster anti-Semitism. Indeed, part of it, it seems, is also to push narratives on Islamophobia, which we're now having this blimmin' government put into legislation. Do you have... I'm assuming, as Israel's embassy, that you probably get briefings, you get guidance from your own intelligence agencies, warning about the sorts of things that might be happening in the UK, and then we'll go to the UK government and express those concerns. If that's the case, are you being listened to?
I saw the report that is about to come out. I saw that it's about to come up. It's not surprising to us. It's something that has been going on for many years from Iran, from Hezbollah, from proxies from Hamas, that has been operating here in the UK for many years through different charities and costumes and disguises. The Al-Quds Day March, by the way, Al-Quds is Jerusalem. That's the Arabic word for Jerusalem. Is organized by a charity called the Islamic Humanitarian Rights Organization or something of that kind. There is nothing that connects humanitarian rights to what they're doing and the values that they are trying to portray in these hateful marches. So, you know, these influences that come from the outside and are dressed up in what we in the West and democratic countries are used to seeing as not only political but legitimate goals. They are not. We are being completely manipulated. And I think this is a wake-up call. The October 7th was a wake-up call for many, especially in Israel, obviously in Israel, but I think it should be a wake-up call to the rest of the Western world, to Europe, to the United Kingdom, to the United States, to understand that your rules have been bent against you.
How concerned are you about the rise of the Green Party? Because it certainly appears to my eyes it's now being used as the political vessel for Islamists who are rather enjoying having a party that they've infiltrated that can sort of pose as being benign and benevolent, hug trees and wear rainbow lanyards, and yet seems to be being taken over by people who, well, they call themselves sort of pro-Gaza candidates, but quite frankly want to see the advancement, it would appear to me, of political Islam. Does that concern you?
I need to be very diplomatic here. Right. Obviously, my role doesn't allow me to criticize political parties here in the UK the way your ambassador would not do the same in Israel. I think I should probably speak in a more general tone. The cause, Israel, the war against Hamas that was waged in the last 2.5 years, have for some reason become a rallying call for many people that identify it with their political views. The Palestinian, and I feel sorry for them, their cause in a sense has been hijacked by people with very general views of what it means to be on a certain side of history. It's disheartening, but again, we have a very good relationship with the United Kingdom. We work with all political parties. So yes, I think I should probably stop there.
Very, very diplomatically circumlocuted, can I just say. And finally, let's talk about Israelis' actions. They are making a ground in Lebanon with their offensive against Hezbollah, striking more locations in Beirut. Are things progressing as planned?
Yes, they are. And I think it's a very important moment for us, this war against Hezbollah. And I think there is a consensus not only within Israeli society, comprised of Jews and Arabs and Muslims and Christians and Druze and Cherkess and so on and so forth. There's quite a large consensus regarding the war against Iran and the war against Hezbollah. What is happening specifically in Lebanon, we also see a consensus on the Lebanese side and also a consensus within friendlier nations, such as France, who is heavily involved in Lebanon as a former protectorate, the United States, which is heavily involved in the region as well. Everyone agrees that Hezbollah is a force that should not hold weapons within Lebanon, should not exist in its current form as a proxy of Iran, and should allow the Lebanese state to hold the monopoly of violence, as is done in democratic societies. I truly wish the Lebanese state and the Lebanese people hope, and as much as anyone can. We're not fighting the Lebanese people. We're not fighting the state of Lebanon. We are fighting Hezbollah. It has become a malignant tumor within that country.
Is there a risk here that Netanyahu's stated aim when it came to Gaza was, we will not stop until Hamas have been destroyed, and Hamas have not been destroyed? They're definitely significantly weakened, but disappeared they are not. Same with Hezbollah. They were significantly weakened. They're being weakened further still. But is there not a risk here that, a bit like a many-headed hydra, these Islamist organisations have a tendency to just pop back up like whack-a-mole, and that you could end up in a bit of a war of attrition in Lebanon?
Well, regarding Hamas, I'll say that it is weakened and we're still working on it. There is a very interesting plan by President Trump, the 20-point plan. Hamas needs to disarm. And there's quite a wide coalition of even Arab and Muslim states that is working together with us in order to achieve that. It takes time. Everything takes time. We're 13 days into this war. People forget that wars used to be fought for years. The 6-day war was an anomaly. A 12-day war is an anomaly. We hope to finish it as fast as possible, always. In the day of today's media and social media, everything has to be fast, low on characters, and very pointy. Does it work like that in real life outside of social media? No, it doesn't. Same with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a tumor, and a tumor is something that takes chemotherapy and treatment. We're doing the treatment as we're speaking.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Alexandra, their spokesman from the Israeli embassy. We're going to be taking a short break, but don't you go anywhere, because it's your calls, your messages coming up thereafter. So if you would like to join the conversation, then listen up. 0344 499 1000 is the number to dial. I'd love to speak to you, especially if you've not called before. And especially perhaps you might be someone looking at what's going on in the Middle East saying, well, do you know what? I'd rather wish Trump hadn't started it. Or perhaps you're watching a bit like me going, get in there, son, every time you open the newspapers and see yet another target obliterated by some pretty sexy flying monsters in terms of American aircraft. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. Write the word talk before you text. And I'll see you just on the other side of these short commercials.
Good morning to you. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Burgess. Breaking news in the last couple of moments. Extraordinary news. Not just that the police have arrived at the Sandringham estate where Prince Andrew, as was now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, is currently living since being thrown out of the Windsor estate. The police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's an extraordinary revelation. And certainly what's been contained in the Epstein files as released in the last few weeks. It's his 66th birthday today. What a birthday present that is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. Now, I was talking earlier that I have grave reservations about the sudden explosion and expansion of the Green Party because I can see what's going on here. I can see that people who probably have very anti-Western attitudes and are not sympathetic towards our morals and values of this nation are using the Green Party as a very convenient vehicle to hide behind. Oh, it suits them very well, doesn't it? The Islamists, those who would support political Islam and want to talk on and on and on about Zionism as racism. Yeah, pretty much the script provided by the IRGC to their assets in this country. Not saying that the IRGC are directing the Green Party, but, you know, saying Zionism is racism is pretty much what the Ayatollah would want to be said on the streets of the United Kingdom. I think it's very convenient, isn't it, that people with those sorts of attitudes are using a party like the Green Party, who to a lot of young people look all positive and nice and shiny and on the side of the alphabet people and tree hugging. And I'm like, really? Really? Are we that naive? Anyway, it turns out the new Green MP for Gorton and Denton, Hannah Spencer, gave her maiden speech in Parliament yesterday. Shall we have a little look at what she was espousing?
To my trans siblings who get blamed for everything. To the Muslims everywhere who are constantly and often violently scapegoated. I want to put Gorton and Denton on the map by championing the positives about our community. The spirit, the warmth, the grit, and the way that we help each other out every single day. Whether that's our neighbours where we live or our siblings in places like Afghanistan, Gaza, Sudan, Iran, wherever we are, we deserve to live freely as the human beings that we all are.
Underneath all those sort of, you know, platitudes of vacuous nothingness, our grit, our determination, our community. She's talking about her friends, their mates, and she literally rattles off the who's who of human scumbag nations. She's like, oh, well, you know, our community and our friends in Gaza, Afghanistan, Sudan, Syria. I'm like, these are terrorist nations, love. Syria? You mean the country run by that geezer that used to be lopping off people's heads for Al-Qaeda, who's going around killing Christians and the like? Oh, yeah, they're lush, aren't they? Great friends to have, Hannah. And then Afghanistan? Good luck, love. See that long blowing hair of yours you like to stick in that weird little troll ponytail like you're a 5-year-old? You try getting those locks out in Afghanistan under the control of the Taliban and see how long you last. As for all of your alphabet friends, they'll be chucked off car parks pretty quickly in that neck of the woods. I mean, I just don't understand why young people today are watching that going, I like the Green Party, they seem really nice. It's like, but have you not opened a newspaper? Do you have no idea how the world works? Can you not see what everyone else can see? That if you're lining up all those nations as your bezzers, then perhaps there's something deeply wrong with your understanding of the world, for crying out loud. That lot are dangerous. I know she looks like the missing member of the female version of the Mario Brothers, but she isn't a joke. She's pretty blimmin' dangerous. The Green Party, they are going to win so big, and that terrifies me what that represents. Because it might look all funny and nice and dungarees and silly hairstyles and, you know, let's all go hug a Muslim because they're being violently oppressed. Really? Are they? Where are they being violently oppressed? Oh, that's right, by other Muslims in those Muslim terrorist states you just rattled off as being, I don't know, utopic nations. I just don't understand politics today and how we got into this blimmin' mess. And young people out there are watching that Green Party going, they seem nice. That's how bad our education system is, isn't it? Corrupted from the inside by mad leftist teachers who equally don't seem to have an iota of a clue of how the world actually works. It's not just something that drives me to despair. It terrifies me to my bone, because I still probably got a good 30 to 40 years left on this planet, and if that's the future of politics in this country, then I'm going to get out. Oh, right, let's have a little chit-chat now to Richard, who is in London. Hi, good morning to you, Richard. How are you doing?
Hello, Alex. Nice to talk to you again. And yes, I mean, obviously, we're all worried about this green phenomenon. And I wanted to talk to you because I think it's now fairly clear that this war that there wasn't planned. It wasn't planned. It's turning into a bit of a disaster. And I'm worried that both Reform and the Conservatives walked into a bit of a trap by kind of jumping on the sort of bandwagon of criticising Starmer for not backing America. And I think the problem I can see, and it isn't just the local elections, I can see this as being more long term. Labour and the Greens are already going to, no matter what they say, there will be tactical voting in order to stop reform, in order to stop the Conservatives. And we don't talk about somebody who's very important here, a person called Carol Vorderman. She organised a website before the last election that lots of people on the left used to basically to help Liberals to vote tactically to basically to stop the Conservatives. Now the Greens and Labour will be doing this big time to stop reform, and I just think it's fairly clear the war's going to be a bit of a disaster. And I just think Kemi and Reform have both walked into a bit of a trap. Now, I think there's a way out of it, because obviously we know that Keir hasn't got any answers at all. When Reform came up with their idea last week to have a kind of border force based on the ICE idea from America, I think we could expand that. Because obviously, what we know about the rape gangs is that both the police and the social services essentially did nothing. And I think, Alex, we need a sort of FBI-type force. Because if the police and the social services are scared of the rape gangs and essentially scared of causing problems with what they call social cohesion, we're going to need a new force to do it.
Well, it's funny that, isn't it? Because Shabana Mahmood at one point was sort of merging departments of the police in order to make something akin to a British FBI. So half of your desires may be met by the Home Secretary, and yet on the other hand, if you want to sort of talk about the looming terror of being called the word racist by standing up to some of the most egregious, disgusting, evil, wicked, perverse crimes that I've ever seen happen, then it doesn't particularly help that the Labour Party are also wading into the fray by demanding that we all sort of bow down to this new legislation of Islamophobia.
Yes, I mean, I agree with that. And I don't think Shabana is to be believed for 5 minutes. I mean, what I've got in mind is essentially a new service, because if the police and the social services don't want to investigate these problems because of their fears about community cohesion, I think we need a new service. I think Reform have got a new idea, have got a good idea with a border force. I mean, Alex, I would even go so far as to say, if you think about it, when you go to one of the supermarkets, they often ask you, do you want to give an extra donation to a charity? Now, say they asked you, do you want to fund a new anti-grooming force? And that's essentially what I'm proposing. Right. People would give. I give a $5 each time because I want a force that goes out there and confronts these gangs. Rupert Lowe's done a lot of hard work here. There's two there's two industries that these grooming gangs control: drugs and taxis. Now, Alex, we've got some good brains in the Conservatives, some good brains in Reform. We need to work out, how do we get the drugs business? How do we go after the drugs business? Because we know people.
Look, this is it. It all comes down, doesn't it, to law and order being executed properly without fear or favour. And that seems to be the problem when it comes to stripping, stop and search, not investigating the crimes of the grooming gangs, instead covering them up. That actually half the issue is everyone's more terrified of hearing the word racist than they are at actually tackling some of the biggest problems in society and protecting the most vulnerable. Richard, thank you ever so much for your call. I'm going to have to say goodbye to you there because we are hurtling at pace towards the top of the hour, which means that Sam, who's tech opping today, will start giving me a countdown for what we call the hard out. But there's still one more hour of the show to go. So stay tuned, put the kettle on, and I will see you on the other side of these commercials. The numbers are on your screen if you want to get in touch with the show. We'll take some more calls in the final hour.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. It is day 14 of the war in Iran. Even more drones and missiles are raining down in the region. Gulf states are reporting more attacks emanating from Iran. Some fascinating developments in terms of Iran lashing out and hitting civilian infrastructure now in Dubai, not just attacking foreign army bases and air bases, not just threatening neighbours you should kick out the American consulates if you want us to stop attacking you, but actually going after residential blocks in places like Dubai. I hardly see that as a strategy for getting people on side, but perhaps it will work. Perhaps after increasing bombardment, eventually states will be saying, we can't cope with this. Please, can you stop everything? Take your finger off the trigger for a moment so we can catch our breath. But certainly things don't look like they're about to calm down any time soon. Believe you me, living just down the road from RAF Fairford, the amount of traffic, especially in the middle of the night, when you know that that ain't a Ryanair plane going over your house as the windows rattle in their frames, suggests to me that we are only deepening the conflict. But let's hope, of course, that America's precision strikes, it's throwing all of its energy at the situation, will get the job done quickly, that the Strait of Hormuz may well open back up. How is America going to defend that 8-mile passage? Well, reassuringly, when Iran decided it wanted to lace the strait with mines, which would be an absolute nightmare to clear, thankfully the Americans managed to take out the ships that they were going to do that with before they could even get them to set sail. America has taken out most of Iran's missile defense systems, meaning they're now able to fly over the territory with big heavyweight bombers, the Stratofortress, the B-52, and drop from on high missiles, which cost far less than surface missiles that were previously being used, which hopefully will mean that if it is down to a race for the preservation of resources, that Iran will run out first. But how is this going to impact the global economy? How is it going to impact oil prices? Well, those are the things that we have to worry about the most at the moment in the United Kingdom, given decades of terribly short-sighted, self-indulgent energy policy, where we now have only 1.5 days of gas reserves left, meaning, well, when they run out, and let's be fair, looking out the window, summer ain't here yet, is it? When those run out, we've got to go cap in hand to other countries of the world and say, please, can we get some LNG from you? Well, in previous years, it's actually been Qatar who has come to our aid. Well, we know that they're not generating or selling LNG anymore. In fact, many of their gas fields have been struck by drones and missiles from Iran. And even if they were able to sell us the LNG, they can't get it through the Strait of Hormuz. So we instead tend to find ourselves going to Norway. And the irony, of course, in that is Norway gets their oil and gas out of the North Sea, where guess who else has oil and gas there? Oh, yeah, that's right, we do. We're just not allowed to touch it because Ed Miliband seems to think that it'd be a far better idea that we try and sing Kumbaya and save the world instead. So there we are. Britain now teetering on the edge of economic disaster. We've had no growth in January, and that has come out before this war even started. So what are we going to look like come springtime? Come the beginning of the financial year? How are energy bills going to look for companies who've been tied up in contracts and now find they're having to renew those contracts at a time when oil is rising at a rate of knots? Because I think it doesn't look like it's going to be very positive news. What's Rachel Reeves going to do about it? Well, we don't really know, do we? They haven't really explained much. On your screen now, you can see US War Secretary Pete Hegseth, who's giving the world an update from the Pentagon on the situation in Iran. We will try and get the top lines out of that for you and brief you as to what America says they're going to be getting up to next. Trump continues to warn that the big stuff is yet to come. What is that big stuff going to be? But let's read some of your messages now. The Green Party are useful idiots to the Muslim vote, says Hev. I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what I've been saying. It's a very convenient disguise for the political Islamists to wear, isn't it? And, you know, when people go, how is it possible that these people could be in the same party as the trans rights movements? And I'm like, that is exactly why they have picked it as the perfect vessel, because it's what they would call taqiyya. It is hiding their true intentions. Alex, you're spot on with your theory about the Greens and radical Muslims, says Tony. Back in 2023, the Electoral Commission rejected the formation of a party of Islam. The only way the radicals can gain power is to infiltrate an already established party. Yeah. And an already established party that likes to bang the drum for multiculturalism, that thinks everyone needs to be hugged, hug a hijab, or whatever you want to call it, who don't really care what voting bloc they're using to try and amass as many votes as possible as a small party. Of course, the Labour Party once courted the Muslim vote, but it seems to me, ever since the snap election, it's quite clear that they've gone elsewhere. And the pro-Gaza MPs have looked at your party and gone, yeah, that ain't really going anywhere, is it? They're just fighting like rats in a sack. They've looked at the Labour Party and gone, well, we're not on your side anymore. You didn't do as we wanted you to do after October the 7th. So they've shopped around and up pops the Green Party. And this really perverse marriage between Marxism and Islamism is taking hold here in this country in front of our very eyes. And yet so many young people just can't seem to see it for what it is, which is, in my mind, quite frankly, terrifying. Howard in Suffolk says, I've been shouting about this for ages, Alex. Every part of government, every institution is now infiltrated. Well, quite. There are Muslim societies for everything, in the police, in the armed forces, in the civil service. And look, OK, fine, have your religion. I don't understand why you need to set up a constellation of entities in your workplace. As far as I know, News UK don't have a Christian society. Because, you know, you just crack on and do that in your own time. And when you come to work, you do your job. I don't understand why we need these networks. And I do have to question what they exist for and how much we can trust them. I said we'd bring you the latest lines from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, who, as you can see if you're watching on screen, is addressing America from the Pentagon right now. Well, he has said that the US is decimating the radical Iranian regime's military in a way the world has never seen before. He says Iran's military have been made combat ineffective. Well, let's hope so too. The big question is, are they now going to be able to protect the passage of cargo through the Strait of Hormuz? Are American warships going to go there, as Trump has said? And guide boats going through the waters, is it going to be safe? Will other nations join America in that process, or are they going to be out there on their own? What about us? Are we going to be sending an aircraft carrier? Well, we said we were going to, and America said not to bother. We're not wanted. Thank you very much. Well, HMS Dragon is on its way out to Akrotiri at long last, having already seen that island of Cyprus, where we have our biggest overseas RAF base, having to be defended by the Greeks, the Spanish, for crying out loud, the French. Oh, Macron's loving throwing everything into the high seas and playing his mini Napoleon role. Let's do some calls, shall we? We're going to have on very soon Tom Tugendhat, former Security Minister, expert at foreign affairs, particularly in this region. So very much looking forward to talking to him and getting his take on how things are progressing and whether he's as positive as Pete Hegseth that Iran's now combat ineffective. But while we wait for him, let's take some calls. Let's begin by speaking to Saeed, who's in London. Good afternoon to you, Saeed.
Good afternoon, Alex. Look, I think that this sort of entire branding of communism and Islamism coming together, I think is very unfair. We've had a Gorton and Denton by-election where I guess the Muslim community, which is supposed to be socially conservative, voted for a white, blonde plumber who loves greyhounds and is led by and is part of a party which is led by a gay, proud Jewish man. So I think that should be seen as a positive, that communities are coming together and working across stereotypes rather than as sort of labeling them as something sinister.
I mean, I hear what you have to say, and I think that on the surface level, doesn't that seem like a lovely position? And I think that that is exactly why the Green Party is such a useful vehicle for some of those people in the Muslim community who don't have benign and benevolent intentions for this country. And when you look at what the Green Party did in order to win some of those votes, they were putting out campaign materials in things like Urdu, using pictures of Netanyahu, pictures of Narendra Modi, talking about how Reform wanted to deport all Muslims, which was an outright lie, which I think is incredibly divisive. Now, at the same time, the Green Party are pushing a policy whereby they want to declare that all Zionism is racism, which I think is an incredibly backwards position, pretty much an anti-Semitic position. So what do you make of that? Do you think that, I'm not saying that all Muslims now voting for the Green Party because the Muslim voters said, look, you know, look at this entity, they're going to stand up for our community, are indeed Islamists or have bad intentions for the United Kingdom, but just looking at some of the social media posts that the deputy party leader of the Green Party, Mohsin Ali, had put out after October the 7th, I don't particularly regard those as progressive attitudes.
No. Look, again, people have been using foreign multilingual leaflets since the 1960s. And the Tory party used a very sort of catchy Hindi song in 2019 about how wonderful Boris Johnson is and how much of a danger Jeremy Corbyn was. So I think, look, I think trying to sort of portray this as something unusual or is not right. And I think, look, Zionism is a political philosophy, Judaism is a religion. So I don't think you can conflate these two things. And look, if people want to sort of criticize a political philosophy, I think that is fine. How is that anti-Semitism?
Sally, thank you ever so much for your call. Really good to hear an opinion that differs to my own and being able to discuss and debate that. Now, if you want to get involved and have a chit-chat with me, then I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. It's your normal network rate. 8722 is the number to send me a text message. Right, talk before you text. If you also want to send me a WhatsApp, you can use that long number, 0344 499 1000. And even leave me a voice note. Let's do some messages before we go to break. Hi, Alex. If America didn't go in and blow up these countries and leave the local people in trouble, which ends up them leaving and only coming to Europe and making everything worse, whose fault do you actually think it is, Iran or the USA? I know I hear that point all the time. Well, if it wasn't for, you know, all these interventions in the Middle East, people wouldn't have come to this country. Piffle, I say, piffle, because these people are coming to this country from lots of countries for all sorts of various reasons. We don't even know if they're coming from those war zones. And quite frankly, often what happens when you have a war is people go to refugee camps in neighbouring countries. What we've got now, by and large, are economic migrants. And the whole idea that we should let an evil regime that poses an existential threat to the world to continue doing what they're doing, proliferating ballistic missiles, enriching uranium, sponsoring terrorism internationally, funding proxy groups, attacking all cargo ships through the Strait of Hormuz, lobbing missiles, wanting to destroy Israel, wipe it off the face of the earth. Oh, well, we better just leave that be in case there are a number of people who come over to this country. Well, guess what? When you look at all the people clambering into boats, how many Iranians have there been? My worry is actually, and I think this is a very sort of widely held concern, my deep fear is it isn't the people who are suffering at the hands of these evil regimes getting in those boats coming to the country. In fact, we're lining the pockets of the evil regime and their proxies who coordinate and corral the illegal immigration of people. And quite who have they put as their sleeper cells who have come into the country legally, so we don't know who they are, where they are, and what they intend to do. OK, keep your thoughts coming in. We're going to take a short break now. Don't go anywhere. There is a lot to discuss. Hopefully we'll be joining Tom Tugendhat straight after this.
Good morning to you. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Burgess. Breaking news in the last couple of moments. Extraordinary news. Not just that the police have arrived at the Sandringham estate where Prince Andrew, as was now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, is currently living since being thrown out of the Windsor estate. The police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's an extraordinary revelation. And certainly what's been contained in the Epstein files was released in the last few weeks. It's his 66th birthday today. What a birthday present that is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome up. Day 14 of war in Iran. And are things going according to plan? Well, let's get the opinion of Tom Tugendhat, MP, Conservative, and former Security Minister. Tom, I can't think of anyone better to speak to about conflict and war in that part of the world. What do you make of America and Israel's strategy? Is it the right one?
Well, Alex, look, it's lovely to see you again, and thanks for the open question, because I think it's a very, very open debate. The reality is it's not immediately obvious what the strategy is from the United States. From Israel, it's clearer. You know, they want to knock out a regime that has been threatening them for 47 years. Now, well, actually a little bit less, because the first few days it didn't. But you know what I mean. It's been a massive enemy of Israel, trying to destroy Israel now for more than 40 years. For the United States, it's not so clear. Is their aim, as Trump has said in the past, to choose the next leader of Iran? Is it simply to knock out the weapons and capabilities of the IRGC? Is it to eliminate the nuclear threat? You know, there's a range of possibilities, and it's not immediately obvious to me that the US have made that clear. Now, part of that may be because actually it keeps your enemy on their toes if they're not quite sure what you want to do. Part of it may also be that they haven't quite decided how they want this to end.
Yeah, I mean, looking at how things have sort of happened chronologically from Trump's first term as a president, with the Abraham Accords, with taking out Qasem Soleimani, and then the bunker buster bombs beginning to attack those underground nuclear enrichment sites, and then now attacking Iran's military capabilities. I can see a logical linear development here, but I suppose the big thing facing Donald Trump now is going to be whether the rest of the world can hold its breath long enough when it comes to the increasing oil supplies, and if he can defend boats going through the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know if you know sort of militarily how possible that is. It's reassuring, it seems to me, that they've taken out Iran's capability of lacing the passageway with mines. But how feasible is it for American warships to escort convoys of vessels through that very narrow gap and protect them from aggressive action by Iran and its proxies?
Well, let's not pretend that's easy. It's not. It's really difficult. And the reason it's difficult is because that's a very, very narrow seaway. If you've ever been to Ras Al Khaimah, which is the Emirati end of that, if you like, the southern end of the Bandar Abbas, the Hormuz Strait, you will be able to see it's really narrow. There's small islands there. So actually, for a big ship like those very large crude carriers, VLCCs as they're called, which go up to Ras Tanura to go and pick up the oil, or the other ones that go further up to Qatar to pick up the gas. You know, it's really hard to maneuver around that, right? So this isn't some sort of, dogfight situation where you can shift left, shift right and avoid things. You absolutely cannot do that. So once these ships are going in a direction, that's where they're going. Now, that's what makes it really hard, because the Iranians can fire. On one level, they can fire those sort of really targeted missiles that sort of track things. Actually, the Americans have done a very, very good job at knocking them out. But they can also fire these Shahed drones, which you've probably heard about. I brought one, as you may know, I brought one to Parliament a few weeks ago, decommissioned, I hasten to add. No armaments in it. But I brought it to Parliament and I put it on display in Parliament so that people could see what it is that we're dealing with. And these things, they're cheap. They're made of, they look like they're made of plastic and with a two-stroke engine on the back. And they're incredibly cheap. And you can fire up lots of them. And that makes it really hard, because not only are they perfectly capable of doing enormous damage to ships in a tight area, But because they are cheap, you can put up an awful lot of them. And you know what it's like. You put up one of these and they cost, I don't know, $5, $10, $20,000 to make, and they're not very expensive. And the rocket that you're firing at them, or the plane that's firing at them to bring them down, costs millions. So you end up in a real unequal equation. It doesn't mean you don't have to do it. You do, but it makes it very difficult.
It seems to me, though, at the moment, intercepting these drones is a bit of a coalition effort from almost everybody, other than those who might tacitly support Iran. But most of the Gulf nations are united in trying to prevent these strikes. You've got most of the European nations, the UK as well. Is there a risk at some point that those sort of like ad hoc coalitions that have formed, which I think are quite miraculous, really, concretising opposition to Iran, is there a risk that that will fall apart?
Well, certainly not at the moment. And just by the way, the Iranians are doing everything possible to make sure that that doesn't happen by firing off missiles at pretty much anybody. I mean, in the most violent and aggressive way, completely untargeted. Look at what's been going on in the United Arab Emirates. I'm sure you've got friends there. I've got friends there. Many people in the UK have friends there. There's about 250,000 Brits who live in the UAE, and before your Lib Dem viewers think that they're all tax exiles, they're teachers and doctors, and they're journalists, they're people who make their life there. Why shouldn't they, right? And these people have demonstrated enormous courage in various different ways. The Emiratis, and what they've done in shooting down these drones has been absolutely heroic. The United Arab Emirates Air Force and military and anti-missile capabilities have been very impressive, as so has the ones in Qatar and Saudi and Bahrain and Kuwait and places. But, what the Iranians are doing by shooting at everybody, by hitting civilian targets, is bringing people together. And I must say, I think it's been very impressive. I agree with you. And, by the way, the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy have been very good at it too.
Oh, Tom, it's been wonderful catching up with you. Let's do this again soon, because you are one of the best voices when it comes to military strategy and geopolitics in the Middle East. The excellent Tom Tugendhat there. Right, let's now speak to Greg Swenson, Republicans Overseas, to get a take on what Trump is facing in America, because it's coming up to midterms over there. We've had the US Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, speaking to press assembled in the Pentagon. He's been saying that the US is decimating the radical Iranian regime's military in a way the world has never seen before, and that their military is now combat ineffective. He says the combination of the US and Israeli air forces is unbeatable, and their intelligence is getting better and more refined. He says Iran has no air force, air defense or navy. Their missile launchers are being destroyed. Their missile volume is down 90%. Their one-way attack drones are down 95%, and it's now exercising sheer desperation in the Strait of Hormuz. But he says, well, that's something we're dealing with. You better get on and deal with it soon. Greg, how popular or unpopular is Trump's interventionism in America? It's coming up to midterms. A lot of MAGA movement lot who voted for Trump did so on the basis that he wasn't going to get himself involved in foreign confrontations. And yet he's probably doing more than any US president in living memory when it comes to trying to reshape the whole world order via war.
Yeah, it's a good point, Alex. And I think while he campaigned on not getting into any forever wars, I think he's still pretty consistent. And this is not going to be a forever war. You're seeing how we are absolutely decimating the military capabilities in Iran. So I'm not, it's very unlikely or impossible that this turns into a forever war. So America First is not America isolated. And I think this is very much an America First movement. And look, this war started 47 years ago, as you pointed out. And so in many ways, it's not really starting a war, it's finishing a war. So I think the Republicans are still very supportive. Yeah, there are a couple of outlier, MAGA types in the media that have been critical of it, but that's rare. It's polling at 80 or higher for Republicans, and of course it's polling at 20 or lower with Democrats. So it's still falling along partisan lines. The Democrats who have been very, very active or supportive of interventions in the past Of course, because it's President Trump, they're very much against it.
Now, the risk is, of course, if the midterms turn out to be unfavourable to Trump and he loses control of Congress or the Senate, it's going to make it far more difficult in wartime for him to be able to act as assertively and decisively as he is, particularly if one or the other turns around and wants to sort of vote against him carrying out a military campaign in the Middle East.
True, and I think that's why one of the reasons he's doing it now, because the midterms are still 9 months away, and so this conflict will be long over by then. So I don't think there's a great risk of the Democrats sort of intervening on this particular issue. But you're right. After next January, it will be much more difficult for the president to act like, to commit to these kind of interventions.
Greg, thank you ever so much for joining us and giving us the American perspective there. And we will continue to bring you lines from the Pentagon press conference, which is currently being held by US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Let's take a short break now. When we come back, we're going to focus our attention back on domestic politics, because there's been a number of Labour councillors jumping ship to the Green Party amid fears of a May wipeout as those once cancelled local elections are now back online. What is this going to mean up and down the country in May? How much of a political threat are the Green Party really? Was it just a bit of a luck of a by-election which tend to sort of scare up some rather unusual results? Or are they here to stay? And what does that mean for our politics? We're going to be asking all of those questions to the brilliant Lord Robert Hayward, who's a Conservative peer and pollster, just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. And I've been prattling on quite a bit about the Green Party in today's show because, well, they scare me to the bone, quite frankly. A load of youngsters looking at them with heart eye emojis going, aren't they lovely? Multiculturalism, rainbows. Everyone's free to be what they want to be. Except it doesn't seem like a utopia to me. It seems to me a very convenient vessel that has been overtaken by some pretty unpleasant forces. Let's speak now to Lord Robert Hayward, Conservative peer and pollster. Robert, always great to have you on the show. Now, the Green Party, is this a sort of flash-in-the-pan electoral phenomenon as we sometimes see with by-elections? Or really, is this now a growing political force that is going to reshape the parties on the left for our political future?
Thank you for your welcome, your effusive welcome, much appreciated. Can I say, I think it's likely that the Greens surge, and that's what it is. will last way beyond the local elections on May the 7th. They've got not only the success in Gorton, but they are showing up in council by-elections at the moment as a reasonable force. Whether it goes beyond that point, beyond May the 7th and returning quite a few councillors or not, that's for the future to judge. But certainly I think their prospects for May the 7th, when there are elections in many parts of England and in Scotland and Wales, are pretty good.
Where in particular are we looking at the growth of the Green Party? We've seen it in Gorton and Denton, which isn't surprising given the demography, and they definitely pushed for the Muslim vote very hard, even being backed by the Muslim vote of the organisation. What other parts of the country are we likely to see turn green?
I think there is a prospect of what happened in Gorton, as you identified, an alliance of the Greens, your party, and also the pro-Gaza independents. If they stick together as a coalition, at the moment it looks as if they're going to, then clearly places like North and East London, the Newhams, the Waltham Forests, the Redbridge, where in fact a pro-Gaza independent came very close to defeating West Streeting at the last election, and equally other parts of Birmingham, the West Yorkshire and the like. But there's also, you were identifying what you described as the young voter, who traditionally don't vote, but we might find that they do turn out on this occasion for part of that green surge. And that would be in places in London where there are high concentrations of students and of young people in bedsits. So we're talking here Islington, Camden, parts of Lambeth, Greenwich, and then in other big university-based cities, the Birminghams, the Manchesters, the Leeds, and of the like.
Where does this leave the Labour Party? Because on one hand, if they wanted to start winning back the critical red wall votes, they need to move more to the right, which people like me would argue would be the best medicine for the country right now, albeit a very dilute form if it's meted out by the Labour Party. And yet there must be calls internally for them to try and move to the left to cover off the Green Party surge, meaning they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Electorally, which direction do you think they're going to pivot to if they're most concerned about keeping bums on green benches?
I think it's going to be hard to sit on the fence, but I think for a while they will try. You've got Shabana Mahmood's proposals in relation to immigration, which are quite reasonably defined as right-wing by Labour standards, not necessarily by others. So that message will be hammered home in, you identified the white working class areas, but equally there'll be others in the Labour Party who are saying, go after this young student, bedsit occupying population, and they will be saying come to the left, and it's going to be a very difficult horse to ride. And at the moment, one of the difficulties the Labour Party's got, the Tories to a lesser extent at this moment, but very much they're getting negative responses from their traditional supporters, and the Labour Party that is, and they do not know whether those people are going to quietly vote for the Labour Party come May the 7th, or whether they will make a jump and go and vote for the Greens. And I think a fair number of them will on this occasion vote for the Greens. So it's a really difficult position for the Labour Party.
I know we're still a relatively long way out from the big elections happening in Wales and Scotland in particular. I want to focus on Wales with you, if you don't mind, because I think we're going to see an extraordinary political revolution where the Labour Party, who have held control of the Senedd ever since its establishment, frankly speaking, of huge swathes of Wales ever since the creation of the Labour Party, has rather been a bit of a one-party state on the other side of Offa's Dyke. And it seems to me that they could face near enough wipeout over there. Are we going to see, do you think, a repeat of what happened in the Caerphilly by-election, where we start getting tactical voting on the left to keep reform out?
I think the tactical voting at Caerphilly has been somewhat overdone. I think there was some, but Plaid started with 28% of the vote with the same candidate that they'd got in 2021. So it wasn't that dramatic a shift, but it was a very good result for them. You're absolutely right that Labour are facing a massive problem in terms of both Plaid and reform. My advice to any of the parties The Scots Labour Party changed the voting system thinking that they could stop the SNP ever actually getting in power. Then they've now changed the voting system in Wales, and it looks as if they're going to have the same disastrous results on a new system. And significantly, there are 96 members of the new Senedd post May the 7th. That's against 60. And I'm not sure that the electorate regularly goes out and votes for extra politicians.
Yeah, I mean, let's sort of broaden this out from talking about potential super left-wing coalitions in Wales to how that might look across the United Kingdom as a whole. We are a long way away from a general election. Possibly not. You never know in our turbulent times. But we're already hearing conversations about either strategic voting or left-wing coalitions. If it came down to it, if we did end up with the sort of things I've seen in emerging democracies where you have sort of balkanised voting blocs all coming together to form super coalitions, if it came down to essentially the left versus the right, who would win?
I think that's very difficult to say. 3 years out, impossible. The Labour Party at the moment has a higher voting rating than Keir Starmer. So the question is, if anybody was working with the Labour Party, would it be a new leader to pull the left together? Equally, the question of a coalition on the right. At the moment, both Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch have said, no way, Jose. So I think it's speculation. It's nice speculation. But even if those blocks did come to an arrangement, I don't think 3 years out you could make a reasonable prediction, and that's how far we are away. I'm hesitant about making predictions for May the 7th, which is only 2 months away, let alone 3 years away.
But this is what we get you on for, Lord Hayward, your political predictions as a pollster. Just finally then, decimation of the Labour Party in May. I think it's fairly safe to suggest that they're not going to have easy elections at the very least. I think the writing is on the wall when it comes to that one. Someone was saying to me just yesterday that they think that as a result of this, it could be goodbye Sir Keir Starmer in May. If that is the case, who would be, from a Labour Party point of view, the best person to take over the reins of that party if they're going to curry favour with the electorate again?
I think there's no question that the rumblings post May the 7th in the Labour Party will be enormous. I think they'll drag on because we've discussed previously how difficult it is to actually get rid of a Labour leader unless Keir Starmer chooses to resign. One of the reasons the Labour Party didn't make the change in January was because they couldn't agree on an alternative, whether that Andy Burnham they'd blocked and he would have won the Gorton by-election for them, West Streeting, etc. The person I think that people have not paid a lot of attention to, and they really ought to, is John Healey. As he would be a safe pair of hands, calming influence, and I think people should pay more attention to him than they are.
Yeah, no, interesting that one, because it's when he said John Healey, I thought to myself, if it was John Healey replacing Keir Starmer, I personally think that would be a bit of an upgrade. I don't really know what his sort of true full landscape of politics and ideologies are, but I get the impression he's probably more from the right wing of the Labour Party.
He is somewhat, but there's no question about it. One of the great attractions is not only he looks safe and calm, and that may be the circumstances that people are looking for within the Labour Party, rather than a big leap to the left or a big leap to the right in terms of their own politics. The other attraction that he has is that he's not from London. The last three Labour leaders have lived within 20 minutes walk of each other in North London. And that really doesn't say a lot about a national political party. John Healey is Yorkshireman through and through. I've got a lot of time for him, but I think if one looks at him, a calming influence may well be what the Labour Party decides they want, but not Keir Starmer.
Oh, fantastic insights there, Lord Hayward. Thank you ever so much for that. I think it's time that we all started boning up on the political ideology of John Healey in case he does become our next Prime Minister, because I, for one, don't really know what it is. So I'm going to go and do my research now and see if I can excavate something in regards to political conviction. Thank you so much for joining us, Lord Hayward. Now, think about this, right? think about this for a brief second. Say Starmer after May, because it goes so cataclysmically wrong, chucks the towel in and just says, I'm off, I'm sorry, I failed, I'm going to leave as Prime Minister, you go on and have a, competition for who's going to succeed me. That could mean that the current Deputy Prime Minister might become a caretaker PM. Well, you know who that is, don't you? Yeah, David Lammy. Imagine that, Prime Minister Lammy. I know, pretty scary stuff. Well, I'll tell you what is even scarier about the concept of a Prime Minister Lammy. If there's one thing that we know old Davy boy loves, it's a bit of reparations, isn't it? He's been banging the drum for that for quite a while. Well, combine that with the fact that George Soros's foundation is funding a massive slavery reparations campaign against Britain, might we be pushed ever closer to the horrifying possibility that our taxpayers' money, our cash money that we've earned through blood, sweat and tears, is being doled out to people from countries that we once colonised quite a while ago, way before I was even a glint in my mother's eye, and you indeed too. And that would then set some sort of crazy political precedent where left, right and centre we're having to write giant charity cheques to nations moaning that we owe them something. We're going to be discussing the Soros Foundation, quite what they're doing in Britain, where's the money coming from, what are they funding, and how effective could it end up being with the brilliant political strategist and commentator who knows all about this stuff, Joseph Robertson. It's going to be a fascinating conversation, so don't go anywhere. We're back after this.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me every weekend from 6 a.m. for the stories that matter to you. We talk politics, we talk news, we talk entertainment, we talk about everything that affects your life. There's only one place to start your weekend, the home of common sense. Talk Breakfast on Talk. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every Friday, Saturday and Sunday here on the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. Now, the idea of playing reparations to me is utterly nonsensical. I'm sorry, but why should I be giving money to someone in the Caribbean or Africa or wherever for something that happened hundreds of years ago that was nothing to do with me. Absolutely nothing to do with me. And also, how has it been decided that all of a sudden, well, we better give money to the Caribbean because if it wasn't for slavery, they would have all these wonderful... There wouldn't be. I'm sorry, there actually wouldn't be the Afro-Caribbeans in the Caribbean were it not for slavery. Not that I'm condoning slavery, by the way, but there were huge benefits to colonialism. We made hundreds of miles of railways. We built infrastructure. We brought them proper government. It wasn't all bad. I'm not saying we need to go and start, poking our nose and taking over countries again and rebuilding the British Empire. But the idea that it left countries broke, suffering and in need of our hard-earned cash in the 21st century, I think is quite frankly ridiculous as somebody who has lived in a great many of these countries. Well, the concern is that as ridiculous as it is, it could be fast hurtling towards becoming a political reality. And here's for why. Because funding from a group founded by good old George Soros has been supporting slavery reparations campaigning against Britain. The Open Society Foundations, which is now led by Alex Soros, the son of George Soros, has been donating vast sums from what is a £17 billion endowment to such progressive causes. Well, with 17 billion quid, why don't they just pay the blimmin' reparations if they're so keen on them? The foundation has given hundreds of thousands of dollars to groups seeking to claim reparations from Britain for slavery and colonialism. But it actually gets worse, OK? This isn't just let's all sit around and put the odd article in a newspaper. No. The OSF has been really instrumental in bringing together CARICOM, which is a Caribbean community, who have already unsuccessfully presented demands to Britain for reparations. Well, they've given them money and actually got them now to join forces with the African Union, having joint events which I'm staggered by that the African Union have gone down that road, but there they are, they have. There was a summit of politicians and activists in Ghana. A joint proclamation from the event in Accra stated that governments on both sides of the Atlantic would pursue remedies for historical mass crimes, including slavery. The OSF gave £300,000 to Ghana's foreign ministry, which at that time was led by one Shirley Ayoko Bochwe, who is a staunch supporter of reparations, but now is a Secretary-General of the Commonwealth. So all these bigwigs in the world of reparations are spreading like wildfire into important positions. Now, what they want to do strategically is to seek a slavery ruling from the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, which can then be used to pressure Britain into paying reparations. No time like the present, because, of course, it's the same legal strategy that has pushed the Labour government to agree to hand over the Chagos Islands. After that ruling, a decision taken at the urging of judges in The Hague, or, maybe lawyers within his friendship group. But how dangerous is this going to be with that Soros money flowing in to this effort in Britain? Oxfam are in on it. Oh, they've been telling the Telegraph it's important to acknowledge the lasting consequences of historical injustices including colonialism and slavery, which continue to shape inequality today. Oh, go on. Put a sock in it, would you? What are you talking about? I'm afraid that colonialism and slavery doesn't shape anything today because they've long gone. They've been over for quite a long time now. The 21st century, the only slavery that does exist is being perpetrated in countries in Europe by people from outside of Europe. In fact, if you do the top 10 of countries where they don't have slavery, they're all in the blimmin' West. So this idea that, oh, well, it's a slavery of the past, it's a problem, frankly, is for the birds. But like I was saying before the advert break, imagine a situation where we end up with David Lammy as Prime Minister. You'd have loving the reparations Lammy as Prime Minister if anything happens to Starmer. You'll be loving the reparations Secretary-General of the Commonwealth in on it, all being funded by George Soros, who's now seems to have captured the African Union with this mad idea. I mean, at one stage I thought this is never going to happen. We're never going to be forced to have to do that. But now I'm looking at how the chips are falling, and I think that it could be actually just on the horizon. Let's hope not. We are going to be catching up with Joseph Robertson on this subject as soon as he gets online. Everyone's being a bit tardy today. I think everyone's got that Friday feeling. But in the meantime, while we await the presence of the brilliant Joseph Robertson, let's speak to our very own Grace, who's in London. Good afternoon, Grace.
Good afternoon. I'll just say briefly on the reparations thing, if I can. I think we need to tackle the fact that there's still a lot of wealth being extracted from those parts of the world. You can't repair history, but we ought to deal with the way that some corporations and banks are still taking a huge amount from some of those places. And it's really exciting how we can help some of the people in those places when they're not being exploited in that way. But we can't fix history, unfortunately. It's almost an insult to people who suffered in history to suggest that we could do.
But would you say that reparations are the right way to go, or is it about saying to some of them all? Because, I mean, look, my argument once upon a time for leaving the EU was it's a corporate cartel which is completely pillaging Africa. As someone who's lived over there, I think the EU's posed the greatest threat to African prosperity, quite frankly.
That was one of the reasons I was kind of leaning towards voting for Brexit. In the end, I didn't vote because I was too torn and I didn't know enough about the EU, but I was leaning that way partly for that reason. But yeah, it just doesn't make sense to imagine that we can fix history, but we should deal with existing problems.
But that wouldn't be in the form of reparations, I'm hoping.
I wouldn't call it reparations because it implies that we're repairing history, and you can't repair
history.
But
do you think that the British taxpayer should be paying money to countries in the Caribbean, to Africa, for things that their ancestors did, which has got very little to do with people alive and working hard today?
Not because of what ancestors did specifically. I think that where there is extreme poverty related to things that have led to us ourselves today living in relative wealth by comparison, we should maybe think about helping people who are the very most impoverished in our world, but not just because of history. We need to deal with today's problems, including present-day slavery. We can't repair history, but we should care about the people who are most suffering right now. But I'm sorry, I shouldn't be going off track because I called it about the Mandelson files.
Let's talk about that. In fact, let's do that, because actually that works perfectly for me, because I've just been handed a piece of copy by Ted, which is showing the first known photograph of Prince Andrew, Lord Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein all together. Ready to see it? There they are, thick as thieves, hanging out on some teak garden furniture in their dressing gowns, having had Lord knows what happened to them. But it's the first known photograph of those three men together. Anyway, what did you want to say about Mandelson, Grace?
Well, I was just thinking. I think your guest earlier said something about him being blessed as having particular political gifts, and that's why he was given this role. And that reminded me of when Lord Gladstone a few weeks ago said that New Labour is like a sin that needs to be repented of. And I kind of agree. And the thing about repenting, and I think all of us need to repent of sin, but the thing about repenting is it's not just saying sorry in itself. Starmer has said sorry, and that's great. But repentance is, as you all know as a Christian, is deeper than that. You know, we can't just say sorry. Jesus died because of our sin, because just saying sorry in itself is not enough. We need to really be sorry for our sin, and Starmer really needs to be sorry for the terrible decision that he made. And as the Prime Minister, and as someone who has worked in judicial cases and has a really good established legal career, he should have had better judgment. The person running the country needs to have better judgment and to be held to account.
Well, you see, this is the thing, Grace. I'm increasingly becoming convinced he isn't running the country, that actually the people running the country are a shadowy cartel who have always controlled the Labour Party, of which Mandelson has for a long time been a key player, which is why he has been a political Teflon. It's why he's had so many comebacks, because clearly he knows where bodies are buried, and he's got a particularly fulsome Rolodex, which I think may have been the reason why perhaps Starmer was pushed into making sure that Mandelson ended up the American ambassador. Anyway, there's going to be a lot more coming out on that, so we'll have to see whether or not Starmer survives it. Grace, thank you as ever for your call. Well, I don't think we're going to have Joseph Robertson on the Soros slavery story, which is a shame, because I was well up for talking about that one. But we do have the brilliant Ian Collins, because I'm wrapping up for the day, and you're just beginning. How are you?
What? No, actually, I'm not coming on till 3 today, so you've got to stay a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm going for lunch.
Have they not told you? You just mentioned the word Rolodex.
Yeah.
Did you ever have one of those things?
No.
Neither did I.
No, but actually I've got a really good friend over in America. He's a veteran political correspondent called John Gizzi, and he's known in America for having the greatest Rolodex on earth, and I have actually seen it. It actually is a Rolodex with all the business cards in it of everybody.
You see, it's like the old contacts books. Now everything's in a phone. I remember when I was working on TalkSport, a sports agent came in who was agent to the biggest footballers ever. I think he had 2 people carrying his filofax. It was the most bulging thing ever, and I thought there's probably, God knows how many numbers, little bits of info are in that filofax. That's how journalism used to work. Now, just lob it in your phone, don't you?
The thing is, though, because I've just had my normal phone go on the blink, so I'm using my sort of weird spare phone. And what I've noticed is I'm getting loads of messages in WhatsApp from unknown numbers because for whatever reason they're not in that phone and in that phone, even though I've moved my SIM card.
You're not cloud-based. You're not cloud-based.
Well, no, one's a Samsung and one's an iPhone.
Oh,
so
don't
it's all gone.
monkey around with mixing up your...
I'm afraid I quit iPhone. I went Android, didn't I? And I've become one of those sanctimonious...
Who quits an iPhone?
Me, I hate iPhones.
I used to have the best phone in the world, and now I'm going to buy something that's completely demonstrably inferior to what I used to have.
At 10 a.m. I already had 22% battery. That's how rubbish iPhones are.
Get yourself a Rolodex.
I'm thinking of it. I'm going very analog.
Carry it around with you.
You should see my house.